Finishing, he himself felt that it was funny and started laughing. Shen Miao's eyes suddenly sharpened. These people's words were all mocking Shen and they really thought that she was the weakness of the first household of the Shen family. Before the anger that was accumulated finally burst forth, she looked at Kai Lin, who was enjoying this good play, and swept her eyes towards the people in the banquet who were mocking. The Shen Miao that was reborn could tolerate, but the mistress of the inner palace, Empress Shen, had a temperament of seeking revenge for the smallest grievances. She coldly said, "My father fights in bloody battles in foreign lands to guard families and defend the country so that the chrysanthemum banquet like today's can be held and students can compete." There was a flash of mockery in her eyes. The win in today's competition does not mean anything. The outstanding people are the ones that have killed on the battlefield. As for the rules you set, why would I not dare? Everyone blanked out for a moment. Why would I not dare? With your exquisite archery skills, you will naturally be able to shoot the fruits, whereas my archery skills are not up to par. If the arrow goes sideways, the person that would fear for their life is you. She smiled lightly as her voice seemed to be flown from afar but was as loud as thunder to everyone. In this case, sign a life and death agreement. Whether injured or dead, the consequences will be at our own peril. Kai Ling, do you dare? In the huge Yanbei Tang, there was a moment of silence. The young female's back was straight. Even though her stature was petite, but it was as if it contained an infinite amount of power. As for her gestures, it was as if everything was beneath her feet. Kai Lin was speechless for a moment. What Shen Miao said was not wrong. To shoot each other like this, the one who would be in the most danger would be him. This was because of Shen Miao's lack of archery skills, and if it was deviated by a little, perhaps that arrow would have pierced into his skull. But how would Kai Lin think that much? He thought it very simply. As long as he chose archery, with Shen Miao's temperament, she would definitely be so scared that her feet would feel weak and beg him for mercy as her tears flow. He would then play with Shen Miao for a round, and with that, Shen Miao's face would be lost and he could help Shen Yu to vent her frustrations. As for matters after that, Kai Lin had yet to think about it. In his mind, Shen Miao would naturally be scared off her wits, and how would she have the energy to shoot arrows at him? Moreover, for a female who have not even drawn a bow before, she would not even be able to draw the bow fully and would only made a fool of herself. Kai Lin thought so, but he had missed out on Shen Miao's reaction. She just looked at him quietly, and that kind of calm was unlike her age, which made Kai Lin feel angry. Shen Miao's eyes were as if she was watching a child performing an act, pitiful but ridiculous. Since he was at the most impulsive age, Kai Ling spoke without a second word. What do I dare not do? Life and death agreement, then life and death agreement. Kai Darren, who was at the male side of the banquet side. He hated that he could not rush up and beat up this unfilial son. Previously Kai Lin was only unruly, but Kai Darren did not think that his son would actually pick on Shen Miao. With regards to the life and death agreement, Kai Darren was not worried about his son's safety but only feared that Kai Lin would really make Shen Miao lose all face or cause an injury to her. Not everyone was able to oppose against Shen, that old roughneck. Shen Yu anxiously said, "Why did fifth younger sister set a life and death agreement? It is only an academy examination, why would one need to go to such extent? This cannot do." Yes, why is fifth lady not sensible? Ren Wanyan frowned. How can one speak such words at a moment of emotions? What if something goes wrong? She did mention that it was Kai Lin that forced Shen Miao to make this choice and only attributed it to Shen Miao's rash actions due to her feeling wronged. Chen Ruchu shook her head and softly sighed. At the end, her desire to win is stronger. For them to be this caring and anxious for Shen Miao, there naturally was no lack of interest at the male side of the banquet. Prince Yu of the first rank kept staring straight at the purple-clad young female as his muddy eyes exuded interest. It was as if a beast had found its prey and his gaze made one feel nauseous. This young lady Shen is truly foolhardy, Prince Zhou pointedly said, to even sign a life and death agreement. She does not know that when she did that, if anything goes wrong, Shen would not be able to bring the matter up. Most likely it was to maintain the Shen family's reputation. Fu Shuyi looked at Shen Miao on the stage and said, after all, no one would be willing to listen to negative words about one's own family. Unfortunately, this would not change the facts at all. Prince Jing shook his head. She is too impulsive. No wonder she is called ignorant and stupid. Pei Lang picked up the tea on the table and took a sip. He also felt that Shen Miao's action was just too impulsive. Although he knew that Prince Jing's words were actually too much, if Shen Miao was thinking for the sake of the Shen family, then she should have thought of a way to retreat without any harm done. Even though this would still be spoken about, it was still better than making a fool of herself in public. Father, she will definitely win. Su Minglang made a little fist with his hands to represent his own position to his father. Master Su looked at his younger son. He did not know why, but he felt that Su Minglang paid special attention to Shen Miao. Master Su thought that it was most likely she had coincidentally entered Su Minglang's eyes. Ever since the last time when Su Minglang reminded him to withdraw from the strong currents, Master Su treated his younger son more amiable. Today he also did not want to sweep his younger son's mood away, so he vaguely went along with his words. Exactly, she will definitely win. Su Mingfeng did not know about Su Minglang's and Master Su's attitudes. If he were to know, he would definitely scoff at them because at this moment he was sitting in the pavilion and could not help but speak as he looked towards the academy examination stage. The young lady of the Shen family is really daring to even draw up the life and death agreement. Could it be that it was common for General Shen to talk about army matters to her and she thought that this was a competition in army? This is just too senseless. Su Mingfeng had never covered up his words while talking to his good friend, but this time he did not hear any words from his most discerning friend and thus could not help but look at the other person. The purple-clad youth picked up the begonia in his hand and contemplated. The sun shone just right, with the breeze blowing the tassel on his dagger and coupled with his handsome brows, his thinking face made one sigh that he was a peerless gentleman. Xie-san, what are you thinking about? Su Mingfeng could not help but ask. Xie Jingxing placed the begonia in his clothes and suddenly stood up with a smile on his lips. Interesting. How about we make a bet? What kind of bet? Let's bet. Xie Jingxing pointed at the stage and smiled breezily. Who will win? Naturally it would be Kai Lin. Su Mingfeng frowned. Could it be that you thought otherwise? I bet Shen Miao will win, he said. Preparation started on the stage. Archery, today's military topic, was enough to capture everyone's attention. But this was not a challenge in an academy examinations but was clearly a gamble of one's life. Guang Wentang indeed let them sign the life and death agreement and the red words on the white cloth were exceptionally eye-catching. Shen Miao picked up the brush to write her name and she wrote it in a naturally elegant way as if she did not care about the importance of this thing. That was of course. She had written her name so many times. When Fu Shuyi wrote the surrender letter to the Xiongnu, when she became the hostage in Qin country, when Wan Yu was married, when the crown prince was abolished. The two words, Shen Miao, represented blood and tears. The suffering and difficulty in the two words was something that no one could understand. In contrast, Kai Lin did not have it easy. Although one would feel the strongest during their youth, but this was after all the first time he signed such a thing like the life and death agreement. Kai Lin was only a child that was very well protected by his family and has not matured enough. When Shen Miao was this calm, it made the fear in his heart grew. Under the heavy weight of the brush, he wrote it difficulty and his name came out crooked, displaying the vast contrast as compared to Shen Miao's name. After writing, he could not help but ask, Shen Miao, are you not afraid that I would shoot slanted during the first round? If I am afraid of you shooting me in the second round, I naturally can injure you in the first round. Shen Miao was about to pick the fruits when she heard the words. She turned around and stared at Kai Lin. Does Gentleman Kai thought it this way? I, however, do not agree. She continued, everyone knows that Gentleman Kai's archery skills are extraordinary and unless it was deliberate, it would never miss. That meant that Gentleman Kai had the intent to kill me but for me it is otherwise. Everyone knows that I am ignorant in archery and if the targets were not shot, it would be reasonable. Kai Lin was startled for a moment before he was dumbstruck and a wave of powerlessness surged up in his heart. That's right. If he shot it slanted, it would be deliberate but if Shen Miao shot it slanted, it would be natural. He cannot even miss any of it because everyone would be able to see that it was intentional. He made Shen Miao to be stuck between two difficult situations and Shen Miao immediately gave one back to him. No matter what, it would still be wrong. In order to avoid being shot by me in the second round, Gentleman Kai can kill me in a rage on the first round. Since the life and death agreement has been signed, when you kill me, it would only signify the end of the challenge and other than the saliva of the whole world, there will not be any responsibility to be borne. I am here. Do you dare to kill? I am here. Do you dare to kill? Kai Lin looked at the young female opposite him like it was the first time, with eyes full of disbelief. He was already accustomed to Guang Wentang and was spoiled as he grew up to almost the point that he could walk sideways. With regards to Shen Miao, he only wanted to teach her a lesson today. Who knew that not only Shen Miao was not afraid but to even go against him? To even say these kind of words at this moment, the one who would prevail would definitely be him. Kai Lin, do you dare? Not to mention if he had the guts, even if he dared, could he? The young master of the Kai family could do things in a moment of emotions, but how about the Kai family? If Shen Miao was really killed by him today, not to mention about paying a life with a life, there exists a possibility that Shen would cut down every single person in the Kai family before apologizing. Furthermore, he did not dare to do so. He was one who could show off with some smart words but had not entered a battle before, so much so that he has never drawn any blood before. His archery was certainly very good but the targets were always fruits or animals and never people. But now how would there be a reason to withdraw? Shen Miao, a female, was not afraid. If he, a dignified man, withdrew then most likely he would have no face to step out of his residence at all. Thinking of that, Kai Lin arrogantly said, as what you say, whatever skills can be seen in the archery arena. You speak happily now but who knows if you would be so frightened that you pee yourself. His words were extremely rude, one did not know if it was said to cover up his own dismay. The calmer Shen Miao was, the more unsettled he became and he somehow wanted to see his opponent's panic as it seemed to calm his own heart down. Therefore, he hoped that his words would make Shen Miao feel embarrassed. For an ordinary lady, if a male would speak that ruthlessly, one would naturally feel shame and fidget in embarrassment or most probably cry in a fit. But when Shen Miao heard him, she only shot a glance at him and that peaceful manner made Kai Lin feel that it was all his willfulness. He was also somewhat baffled and suspected that he himself was somewhat muddled. How could he feel a guilty conscience when facing Shen Miao, this idiot? Shen Miao had already gone to the examiner to get the fruit. That fruit was as big as an adult fist and it was square-shaped at the bottom while its top was round. Shen Miao stood at the utmost east side of the stage and placed the fruit on top of her head. The arena started to gradually liven up. At this moment she must be forcefully keeping herself calm but is actually frightened out of her gall. Yi Peilan smiled as she said, I really cannot wait to see her so scared that her tears and mucus flows. Ever since Mingqi examinations were established, there was never a time that a female would be challenged by a male in a military topic. Zhang Xiaozan stuck her finger up and crooked her head. Shen Miao can be considered the first. But to be made a fool in front of everyone, it would be terrible just thinking about it. Ayo, why is fifth lady still standing up in front? What if the young master Kai misses? Ren Wanyan said. She felt some predicament in her heart. If something really happened to Shen Miao, no matter how well Shen treated the Shen family, he would also not let her off the hook. What is second Sao worried about? Chen Ruchu lightly said. Anyways, everything is just kids playing around. The young master of Kai family is not a child who does not know anything. As long as fifth lady soften up and ask for mercy, naturally he would not make things difficult for her. Now one can only hope that fifth lady would not fight back in a moment of anger. She took this kind of life and death matter and used kids playing around to describe it. After all, Ren Wanyan was the one managing the family and if anything went wrong, it would be her who would bear it. However, her words went into Ren Wanyan's heart. Everything was because Shen Miao's spur of emotions. If Shen Miao asked for mercy nicely and said a couple of nice words to Kai Lin, she naturally would not have fallen to this point. Rest assured, Chen Ruki said, I see that gentleman from the Kai family most likely just want to scare fifth lady. In this academy examination, everyone is fighting for an elegant demeanor, thus it would not be possible to stop now. Mother need not have to worry. Shen Qing also said to Ren Wanyan, Kai Lin's archery is very good and it would not be the case that the targets are not hit. Shen Qing was thinking that since Shen Miao was blocking her dreams of being a prince's wife, she could not wait to pull down Shen Miao's prestige to nothing. Hearing that some people could be so scared that at times they would wet themselves, she wanted to know what would Shen Miao do. Shen Qing thought, if Kai Lin really missed, it would be good to have her face ruined. Shen Yu did not go as far ahead as Shen Qing. She only wished to look at how Shen Miao would beg for mercy while kneeling, as if with that she could be able to gain back her self-esteem. She glanced at Kai Lin from afar but he did not seem to have seen her. Kai Lin was holding the longbow in his hands as he faced Shen Miao, who was 30 jawn away with his forehead filled with cold sweat. Shen Miao stood there quietly as the wind blew her cloak. Between the rustling of the purple cloak, her brows were just like its surrounding but there was a type of majestic bearing, as if it was the calm after one had experienced storms and waves, and it coated a layer of dazzling brilliance all over her. Kai Lin slowly pulled the bow as he thought, as long as Shen Miao begs for mercy. As long as one tear falls and she asks for mercy, he would then take the opportunity to humiliate her and he would not need to be in this dilemma anymore. Unfortunately, his wishes were fruitless at the end. Shen Miao had a calm expression, as if he was not worth her attention. Shen Yu frowned. Why has the scene of Shen Miao crying for mercy not appeared? Why did Shen Miao look even calmer than Kai Lin? There were already many people who had realized this point and their original impression of that idiot gradually changed. Not every young lady could stand with a bow and arrow pointing at her without having great waves of expressions. If that was inherited from Shen who had an unchanging face of calm in front of the enemy, one can only say that when a father was a lion, the daughter could not be a dog. Kai Lin's hands started trembling and the fruit that was 3 jawn away was normally an easy feat for him, but today it was exceptionally difficult. That distance seemed to be very far away. And Shen Miao words lingered by his ears, I am here. Do you dare to kill? Did he dare? Did he dare? Did he dare? With a shoe sound, the arrow streaked across fiercely. But it only stayed in the air for a while before falling off. So much so that it even dropped before it reached the hems of Shen Miao's clothes. It was as if not enough energy was used, much less able to hit the target which was the fruit. The entire arena was filled with laughter. Even some of his classmates laughed as they joked. Kai Lin, do you have tender and protective feelings for the fairer gender? Else why can you not even shoot at 3 Zhong when 10 Zhong targets will be hit accurately? He wiped the sweat on his forehead and immediately started to pull the bow again. The second arrow landed at Shen Miao's feet. The third one brushed against Shen Miao's hairstyle and touched the fruit on top of Shen Miao's head. Shen Miao's hairstyle became undone and her black hair flowed down her entire shoulder. However, even when the arrow brushed past her, she did not change her expression at all. The black hair, purple clothes and the fair complexion of the young female stood up straight in the wind. Both Kai Lin's hands softened and the bow and arrows fell all around the floor. The entire arena was silent. Even a fool could see that the person who was afraid was not Shen Miao but Kai Lin. I am here. Do you dare to kill? You dare not. I dare. She smiled lightly and that bright pair of cub-like eyes had a trace of ruthlessness. Coupled with her currently slightly naive face, it was strangely beautiful. Now it's my turn. The words now it's my turn were said lightly by Shen Miao but had an inexplicable chill in them. As if the sound was from the highest of heavens and hit Kai Lin heavily. Cold sweat that was formed on Kai Lin's forehead rolled down as he stared at Shen Miao, who was in front of him. Shen Miao took a few steps forward and bent down to pick the longbow from the ground. Everyone in the arena watched her every move as their eyes were reluctant to even turn away. This was an unexpected scenario. One had originally thought that Shen Miao would have fainted due to the scare or would have forgotten about her appearance, but she did not do any of it. It was however Kai Lin who was soaking in cold sweat and cannot even shoot any of the 3 arrows properly. After a brief silence, the audience below the stage started discussing. It was true that with a father as a lion, the daughter could not be a dog. This young lady Shen is really bold. The person who spoke had a not bad relationship with Shen Xin. Previously when he heard the rumors that Shen Miao was an idiot and a fool, he was suspicious but with a look today, he knew that these words were groundless. To have such guts and boldness, how would one be a fool? It was obvious that it was someone's deliberate act to purposely discredit the little young lady's reputation. Indeed not bad. Did you see that just now she did not even blink? If that arrow was slanted a little bit more, it would have injured her cheek. This young lady does really have the air of a general. Even if it was us up there, we would have jumped in shock. You also did not realize which family she is from. How would General Shen's young lady be bad? It seems that those words were just rumors and are not credible. No wonder one would deliberately discredit her. Wind damages the flourishing trees in the forest. To be this outstanding at such a young age, no wonder it would arouse jealousy. Most of the attitude of the people in the official circles of Shenzhen was rather good. After all, there were many interlocking interests. Moreover, they were always working in the court and would not be as cautious as the womenfolk and also see things differently. In the past it was because of Shen Miao's young age, but now after growing up, she could naturally show her outstanding skills. Prince Zhou and Prince Jing exchanged a look before Prince Jing shook his head and sighed. Seems like both of us were wrong. She really is an audacious person. Number 9 is regretting it now. Prince Zhou turned towards Fu Shuyi and smiled. Such a unique female, how could one refuse initially? A person would not change to be like this overnight. It should be that 5th young lady Shen meet with some expert or else it would be that she deliberately pretended to be a fool in the first place. No matter which one is, number 9, you would still be in a loss. Prince Jing said. Fu Shuyi smiled as he said, a gentle and graceful young lady, unfortunately not the person I am delighted with. Regret it. Fu Shuyi did not realize it but it was Shen Miao's calm and quiet look that fell into his eyes and it seemed to be a bit dazzling. He also did not believe that a person would become so different overnight. Was it possible that her previous self was a pretense? But why pretend to be a fool? Was it deliberately done to make him dislike her? Pei Lang placed the teacup he was holding down. He did not know why but just now he was worried for Shen Miao but she had unexpectedly held on. Not only did she held on, she scared Kai Lin so much that he could not pull his bow properly. Shen Miao was actually this powerful. Indeed an exquisite person. Prince Yu smiled satisfied as he stared at Shen Miao's body fixedly. I do not know. What kind of taste would it be? Pei Lang frowned. With Prince Yu's words, he was most likely thinking about some dirty and shameful stuff. Unfortunately, Pei Lang's words were of the lowly and carry little weight and could not do a thing. You have lost. In the pavilion, Xie Jingxing leaned against the window and said lazily. It has actually ended up like this. Su Mingfeng's eyes could almost pop out. He looked at Xie Jingxing and then looked at the faraway stage before asking, did you already know about this early on? When one agreed to the bet, one must accept to lose. Xie Jingxing stood up and pat the dust away from his body. All right then, I concede. What is the penalty? Su Mingfeng answered balmy. How about the penalty is for you to treat the buried 20 years Nurhong for my celebration after the challenge? You are truly black-hearted. Su Mingfeng cursed before realizing something and asked puzzled, but then, what's the celebration? Are there things that are worth celebrating? Now there isn't but there would soon be. Xie Jingxing brows were pricked, something that is worth celebrating. Up on stage, Shen Miao passed the fruit to Kai Lin. When Kai Lin's hands took the fruit they were trembling as he asked, Shen Miao, do you have knowledge of archery? No knowledge. Shen Miao slightly smiled as she looked at him. Today is the first time I have touched a bow but since there are 3 arrows to shoot, if one does not understand during the first arrow, there is another arrow to always learn. Kai Lin shuddered in cold sweat and looked at Shen Miao incredulous. Are you not speaking nonsense? Just now Shen Miao's performance was calm and steady as if she had often done it with others. Thus he thought that Shen Miao would be skilled. After all Shen Xin is a formidable general and it was possible for him to personally teach his own daughter archery. But now Shen Miao actually said that it was her first time touching a bow. How would she dare? He said, you do not know anything, how can you shoot? It is obvious that the fruit will not be shot and I would die in vain. Gentleman Kai is being too ridiculous. Shen Miao serenely opened her mouth. Her voice was not high nor low and when she spoke, it was enough for the entire arena of people to hear her. Everyone's brows lowered as they looked at that purple-clad female who has an aggressive air. Just now when Gentleman Kai challenged me, why did you not ask if I had any knowledge in archery? Just now when arrows were shot at me, why did you not ask if I would be dying? Why is it when it is my turn to shoot, you only ask if I have the knowledge and ability? These words rendered Kai Lin speechless. Indeed, he only did it to bend it out for Shen Yu and deliberately chose archery that Shen Miao had no knowledge. But now it seemed that he had crushed his own foot while trying to maneuver a rock. Young Lady Shen, this canine son is naughty and mischievous, this official will represent him to apologize to you. You must not be calculative. It is just that since you do not have any knowledge of archery, this would inevitably cause an accident and it would be difficult for you to hold responsibility. Kai Darren finally could not take it and suddenly opened his mouth to speak after his friend's constant stares. After he spoke, his face turned red but he had no other way. Although it was shameful, it was better than letting his own son lose his life. He even used this official to threaten Shen Miao. Even though it was not good to bully a little young lady like this, Kai Darren somewhat blamed Shen Miao for not knowing how to be flexible and his tone of voice could not help but be imposing. But how would Shen Miao be intimidated by an official? She had dealt with the Shang Nu, the Qin imperial family and the Ming Qi's emperor. She really did not attach any importance to an official. Thus everyone intently watched Shen Miao slightly raising her head as Kai Darren stood at the bottom of the stage. Even though it was far away, it looked like he was prostrating at Shen Miao's feet like a courtier. Moreover, Shen Miao's next words left everyone stunned. She said, Kai Darren, just now I bet my own life and now it is Kai Lin's turn to bet his life. The life and death agreement has been established. The white paper in black words states it very clearly, even if I shoot him to death today, there would not be any relations. When one agree to the bet, one must accept to lose. Not waiting for Kai Darren to speak, she continued speaking, one would not have trust if one does not follow what was established. These rules were set by Kai Lin and for you to now object, does it mean that Kai Darren is also like this in the official circles? Once the situation looks wrong, you will immediately change the rules. Previously Kai Lin said, Guang Wentang does not prioritize specifically for anyone. It is the case for previous regulations for the challenger to define the rules. Why? A dignified Grand General's daughter is such a timid younger generation. His words were as if it was at one's ears and now Shen Miao gave them back how they were originally said, slapping Kai Darren's face directly and made Kai Lin speechless. Rules were set by you and now it is you who wants to quit. It all came right from one's mouth, how could it be said as such? Are Ming-Chi's Darren's all like so? Her words were incisive and merciless as she spoke about the bigger picture of things, making Kai Darren break into a cold sweat. There were so many colleagues of the official circles in today's event, his fellow allies and rivals were also present. When Shen Miao's words falls into one who has the intention, who knows what kind of article would be written and not to mention that the Imperial family members were also present. If it had attracted the Imperial family's suspicion, let alone Kai Lin, even the entire Kai family would have to suffer along. Young Lady Shen's words are not wrong. But the one speaking was Prince Yu. He smiled eccentrically at Shen Miao and said, Kai Darren, Gentleman Kai has set the rules himself and naturally have to see them to the end. Since when would Prince Yu help to rescue anyone from difficulty? Once the words were said, suddenly everyone's gaze was cast on Shen Miao, filled with various kinds of looks, some understood clearly, some were filled with scorn. Prince Zhou and Prince Jing looked at one another. Prince Jing sighed, even Royal Uncle has spoken. Perhaps we would have another young Royal Sao. Prince Zhou finished speaking and he himself found it ridiculous, so he shook his head and did not speak. Since Prince Yu had spoken, even if Kai Darren had some dissatisfactions, he dared not refute. Even though he was frightened in his mind, he could only thicken his skin, it is this official that did not consider everything. He glared angrily at Kai Lin before turning around to walk away. Kai Lin watched as his father left and he felt an urgency. He originally felt that Shen Miao most likely was only good at talking but when he met Shen Miao's clear eyes, his heart could not help but felt cold. She was like a beast that does not make any sound. She obviously looks like a little young lady but how could that feeling be so scary? He suppressed his voice and said, if you injure me, the Kai family will definitely not spare you. This was considered threatening. Kai Lin was riding a tiger and it was hard to get off. With Shen Miao archery skills, if she were to shot off a little, his little life would be hard to protect. When he went with his friends during hunting, he had seen times when the arrows were shot slightly off and pierced into the prey's eyes or ass. Even though it was not a shot that killed, the scene of a prey struggling was really tragic. Could it be that he would be that slaughtered lamb? He threatened like that to only hope that Shen Miao would behave appropriately a little, pull the bow gently and just put on a show of doing it but not actually doing it. He whispered again, if you are sensitive this time, in the future, I would not find trouble with you and Guang Wentang. Shen Miao gently raised her eyebrows and looked at him. Kai Lin was anxious, fearing that she would not agree to it. Unfortunately for him, she had met too much of such people in her past life. They were bullying the weak and fearing the strong. If one were to let it go today, once the matter has passed, Kai Lin would definitely be like he was in the past and would even find an opportunity to take revenge for losing face today. Just like a dog that just left its nest in the jungle. It had thought that it had dominated the jungle and when it had met a ferocious wolf, it changed his expression and thought that there would be a chance in the future for this dog to think of ways to try again. Unfortunately, she was never a wolf. She was a tiger. It was either to make this dog never to come forward again to provoke, or else it would be to bite and break his neck, so that he would never ever dare to have provocation in his heart. She gave a slight smile. Previously I asked you, I am here. Do you dare to kill? And your archery has answered the question for you. Now that this question is before me, do you want to hear my reply? Her little face was as bright as a jade and there was a slight tenderness in it, as if it was the adorable grown young buds in spring, but her words were so savage that they made one's heart palpitate. I dare. After saying that sentence, she turned and walked towards the shooting platform. Kai Lin stood stunned at that very position until the examiner called out his name, making him recover his senses. Only then he discovered that the audience were all looking at him as if they were looking at an interesting play. His eyes landed on the pink-clad young lady that was sitting afar at the female side of the banquet. Shen Yu was talking to the person at her side and was not looking at the stage. He suddenly felt somewhat disappointed and felt that his current actions were more hateful. It was originally him who had provoked first and how would there be a reason to retreat now? If he were to lose against a female, he feared that the Kai family would become the laughingstock in the capital, not to mention that Shen Yu was looking from the audience. If he made a fool of himself, how would he be able to face Shen Yu in the future? Just a little female, to speak as if she was that scary, could it be that she really dares to murder? Even if the life and death agreement was established, it was not easy to clear things up if one were to kill another. Figuring out this point, Kai Lin encouraged himself in his heart and put on a calm pretense before walking to the three-jong area and placed the fruit on his head. Everyone looked at him before looking at Shen Miao and felt a little strange. From a distant, Xie Jingxing parted his lips to speak, make a guess. Will it hit the target or not? Definitely not hit. Su Mingfeng stared at him, not to say she does not have the guts to injure Kai Lin, even if she dares, does she have the ability? There are only a few unmarried females that practices martial arts and furthermore you should know that in Ding capital, she has no knowledge of anything. Xie Jingxing lowered his head and smiled, not necessarily. Could it be that you want to bet another round with me again? Why is there a need to do that? I have already seen the outcome. Su Mingfeng was used to how mysterious his good friend speaks and said, what is the outcome? Xie Jingxing lazily said, you lose. Shen Yu looked at Shen Miao who was on stage and for no reason, her heart started to feel tightened. She softly asked Chen Ruchu, mother, will she injure Gentleman Kai? Naturally not. Chen Ruchu looked at her own daughter who was also bewitched by Shen Miao today and could not help but sigh. Thinking that she was still young and could not maintain her cool. She said, how could one so easily hit the target? I heard your eldest bow said before that strength is required to pull the bow apart, and your fifth younger sister had never practiced on normal days in the Shen residence, so I fear that a lot strength would be used by her to pull the bow. You must not indulge in flights of fancy as your fifth younger sister is just joking. Was Shen Miao really joking around? Naturally not. She lifted her hands, arranged the arrow and pulled the bow apart. The actions were all completed in one go and it was done so smoothly as if this had been practiced for thousands of times. There was no instance of being unable to pull the bow due to her delicate hands nor was there any hesitation on not knowing what needs to be done. Her actions were structured and orderly, making others suspect that she was a skilled archer. In the next moment, the arrow that left the bow headed towards Kai Lin with murderous intent. The entire arena quietened down, and in that extreme silence the arrow that fell onto the floor made a clear crisp sound. And at the tip of the arrow, there was a little red on it. On and off stage, everyone was frozen as if the entire scene was a painting. The person who broke the painting was Kai Lin. He raised his hands and touched his left cheek. The arrow that just brushed past left a little trace of dark red blood behind. Everyone was stupefied. Shen Miao actually dared to shoot and not to let the arrow fall halfways nor purposely missed it way off. She shot it not far away nor near the fruit but just brushed it exactly past Kai Lin's cheek. Kai Lin shouted out loudly, "Shen Miao, what are you doing?" His voice hardly left when the second arrow was released and it swept past leaving a slight wind. It also exactly brushed past his right cheek, not even slanted a little. Kai Lin suddenly felt a burst of fiery pain in his right cheek and when he raised his hands to touch, he was surprised to find that there was a trace of blood. He has almost gone crazy. He stared at Shen Miao incredulous and even Kai Daren also wanted to stop it but Prince Yu of the first rank was sitting in front, so he did not dare to move. Ren Wanyan suddenly stood up. Has fifth lady gone crazy? How could she dare to injure the young master of the Kai family? Your residence's fifth young lady is really powerful. Yi Fern pretended to be surprised. How would an ordinary female have such courage? To injure the young master of the Kai family, would not both Shen masters because of this have poor relations with some colleagues? These words spoke into Ren Wanyan's and Chen Ruchu's hearts. They were previously thinking that it was only Shen Miao making a fool of herself, and who knew that Shen Miao not only did not embarrass herself but she also injured Kai Lin. If the Kai family started to criticize the Shen residence because of this, since the Kai family took the literary official route, wouldn't the two brothers, Shen Gui and Shen Wan, be any better after offending the Kai family? Thinking of this, Ren Wanyan became incredibly anxious and wished to immediately drag Shen Miao to the Kai family to apologize. Just as she wanted to shout out to stop Shen Miao's actions, Chen Ruchu's hands pressed her down. Younger sister, what are you doing? Ren Wanyan spoke unhappily, just watch fifth lady causing trouble. Later when master questions, who can take this responsibility? Chen Ruchu practically admired this second Sao. Her identity was much noble than Ren Wanyan and self-boasted to be from a scholarly lineage. Thus would not have performed such secular actions and naturally was not on board on Ren Wanyan's idea of stopping this in front of everyone. She said, second Sao's thoughts are not bad, but just now one would have also heard that even Prince Yu of the first rank had also spoken. Else why would Master Kai not say a single word till now and only watch his own son being injured? Even if second Sao speak, can it be decided? Instead it is better to wait and see and if questions were asked, just take it as kids playing around. Don't tell me that one can only just watch as it unfolds. Ren Wanyan's heart knew that Chen Ruchu's words were rational but she could not help to worry, if fifth lady does not know the severity of it and create a big mess. Life and death agreement is one thing but Ding Capital's rumors are another matter in itself. What is there to be afraid of? Did you not see how fifth lady shot? Chen Ruchu laughed. She obviously know how to pull the bow and did it only to bring him down a peg and retaliate. But she should know the seriousness and propriety of the matter, else it would not be just a simple scratch of the cheeks. Chen Ruchi sighed. Anyhow people would be offended and since that is the case, let nature take its course. If fifth young lady is really ruthless, one would fear that she would bear a reputation of being vicious and malicious. The sisters-in-law words were heard by the two sisters, Shen Qing and Shen Yu, without missing a single word. They were still young and do not understand things of the official circles thus they only heard the last sentence. Shen Yu looked at Shen Miao who was wearing a wide-sleeved dress and saw she was cool and composed today and had created a stir that was very hateful. She was thinking that if Shen Miao shot Kai Lin to death, it would be good. Then Shen Miao would have to pay for it with her life. With such a vicious person, who would dare to marry or get closer to her? Now this kind of scratch was only powerful but not vicious at all. While thinking thoughts like this, something flashed across Shen Yu's eyes. The safety of Kai Lin, who single-heartedly made things difficult for Shen Miao because of her, had been thrown to the back of her mind as she was wishing for Kai Lin to use his own life to solidify Shen Miao's vicious reputation. Although the audience below the stage was discussion, but because of Prince Yu's face, they did not dare to speak out. Even the husband and wife of Kai family was at the moment so anxious like their hearts were burning but could only watch their own son standing on the stage, becoming a target. Shen Miao, what exactly are you trying to do? To shoot two arrows successively and scratch the cheeks, making the entire face burning up in pain, Kai Lin felt that other than anger towards Shen Miao, there was also a trace of fear. He suddenly discovered that there was nothing that Shen Miao didn't dare to do. She was evidently mad, she dared to do anything. Even though there was a distance, Shen Miao's voice was a little vague and did not flow out to the audience but was enough to be transmitted to Kai Lin's ears. Her voice was light and flowy, as if it came down from the clouds and made one not dare to look up. She said, teaching you a lesson. Suddenly Shen Miao raised her voice, there's still the last arrow. Everyone in the arena was staring straight at the arrow. Kai Lin's legs was almost soft and he had to bite himself to not fall. Because he had seen that Shen Miao's arrow was aimed at his head. He was very scared and that was a life-fearing trauma of the Shen family. This kind of fear was so menacing that it grabbed all his attention at the moment. He really wanted to flee from this academy examination stage but Shen Miao's arrow was aimed at him as if it will chase him to the ends of the earth. Young lady of the Shen family is just too competitive. Even though the Darens at the male side of the banquet admired Shen Miao calmness, they were also distraught by her current performance. One had to know that it was not a good thing for a female to be too competitive. Now she hung on to Kai Lin and not let go, just to take the revenge of the provocation that Kai Lin gave to her. But Kai Lin did not create any harm to her, whereas Shen Miao was currently injuring Kai Lin's face. Even though males are not as pampered as females and it would not be any issues of having a scar, but to have it on one's face. It was after all not good looking. This is then like General Shen's daughter. There were some who were cheering on Shen Miao. If one only know how to be bullied by others and not retaliate, then if General Shen knows he would be so angry. But look at her now, the tip of the arrow is aiming straight at Kai Lin's head. This is an intent to end Kai Lin's life and is just too vicious. Both Kai Lin's legs kept trembling as he viewed that purple-clad young female afar like the devil. Her looks were gentle, warm and beautiful and her eyes were clear with some touches of naivety. But the actions that she took did not have any hesitation at all. Shen Miao lightly said, the third arrow. Her hand loosened and the arrow projected forward as the sharp killing intent charged towards Kai Lin's forehead, frightening Kai Lin so much that he knelt down with a putong sound as he screamed out, help. Lin Kai Fern and Kai Daren simultaneously shouted out in shock. Everyone stood up and stretched their necks to look at the situation on stage. Kai Lin collapsed onto the ground and there was that fruit rolling around that had an arrow shot through, cleanly making a hole in it. In the silence, the fruit's appearance was like the largest sarcasm that was reflected on Kai Lin's scratched face filled with fearful tears, as he looked at Shen Miao standing still, full of indifference. She kept the bow and bent over to pick up the fallen fruit before looking at Kai Lin and laughed, you have lost. She originally looked delicate and from the beginning to the end was overly quiet that made others ignore her age. Now with a laugh, there were traces of naivety in her looks. Everyone looked carefully and felt that even if she was stupid in the beginning, she was not anymore. This little young lady actually looked bright and there were traces of gracefulness in her beauty. Kai Lin could not say a single word, and there were traces of blood still on his face that have not been wiped away. The tears that trickled down were mixed with those blood traces, making his entire face red and looking like a sorry figure. At that moment he did not care about any reputation and just looked at Shen Miao, with eyes full of fear. Shen Miao's brows raised, it seemed that he finally knew what was fear. It is good that he was afraid. Killing the chicken to warn the monkeys, in the future all these snakes, worms, rats and insects around her would then know not to go beyond their boundaries. The servants supported Kai Lin, whose legs were scared weak, down the stage. The responsible examiner walked over to Shen Miao's side and asked in surprise as he saw the fruit that the arrow pierced through, young lady Shen practiced archery in the past. Not only the aim was good and the strength to pull the bow needed to be constant. Shen Miao, a delicate and pretty young lady, could pull it off so skillfully in that last shot, everyone could clearly see that Kai Lin fell down scared, whereas Shen Miao was still able to shoot the fruit even in the situation when Kai Lin was moving. This was something that was surprising. Practice before, Shen Miao slightly tilted her head and got caught up with her thoughts. That was during her first year as a hostage in Qin country. The imperial family of Qin, regardless if it was the princesses or prince, all loved to humiliate her, and seeing her an empress suffering such insults was an extremely interesting thing. Unfortunately she could not get angry about it as at that time Qin country was lending troops to Mingqi. Those princesses and prince invented a new way of playing, and it was like the rules that Kai Lin set in the academy examinations. Changing it to humans to hold the fruit. When she was wearing the target, they would deliberately mess up her hair or destroy her clothes with the arrows and even occasionally injure her arms, neck or likewise. And she could only endure it. At that time, she would always be in her own house every night carefully erecting a target and practicing hard. She imagined those people who had harmed her before as targets, and with her serious practice and effort, she was able to shoot with unfailing accuracy. But during the day when it was her turn to shot, she would still deliberately miss it or pretend to be unable to pull the bow apart. There was no choice as she was staying in another house and she needed to lower her head. She had to survive to return to Mingqi in order to meet Wan Yu and Fu Ming. That kind of hard work lasted for an entire year. Now that Kai Lin mentioned it, it suddenly made her return to those days of humiliation. Now there was no one else that has a handle on her, so naturally she could kill if she wanted and shoot if she wanted. Not being restricted in living, whoever that provoked her, she would get back to them viciously. The Kai family dared to speak about Shen Qin, she will make them shut their mouth in fear. This was then what she should have done. She smiled slightly, had seen eldest brother practice diligently in the courtyard. After seeing so many times, one would follow suit and did not think that one would succeed with a lucky stroke. This made the Kai husband and wife extremely furious. Their son, who would usually get the first rank in archery, was not able to shoot the target at all today and was even made a fool in front of everyone. Shen Miao only said that she had followed suit and pulled the bow for the first time and she was able to hit the fruit target. What kind of silly thing was this? Pa pa pa. Melodious claps were heard and everyone looked back to see Prince Yu clapping his hands. It was indeed not bad. She took a glance at him but did not make a sound. The examiner said, for the topic on archery, is there anyone else who wants to challenge? Naturally Shen Miao was considered the winner of this match, and the others could come up to challenge her. If no one challenged then Shen Miao would be the first rank without any qualms. Hearing this sentence, Shen Yu's expression looked ugly in a short moment. This was the first examinations that she was completely overshadowed by Shen Miao. She looked at Fu Shuyi, who was talking to Prince Zhou and Prince Jing, from afar and her tightly clasped hands relaxed. She could not help but curse that useless Kai Lin in her heart. But at the next moment, someone from the arena shouted, I want to challenge Shen Miao. In the male side of the banquet, there stood a youth. This person looked around 16 to 17-year-old and looked not bad. Unfortunately that pair of eyes were unable to conceal and revealed shrewdness that even if the tone of voice was filled with modesty, it made one feel that it was a hypocritical act. With only one look, Shen Miao knew who this person was. She felt that it was somewhat funny in her heart as this was the Marquis of Lin An's Shu son, Xie Jingxing's Shu brother, the second young master, Xie Chongwu. This person does not have other abilities but was very slick and sly. In the official circles one must have a slick and sly attitude and must know how to butter up others. Afterwards when the entire Xie family collapsed, this pair of Shu sons and Madame Fang relied on the new emperor's compensation to the Xie family to live comfortably, and Xie Chongwu and his younger brother, Xie Chongchao, even became officers in court. At that time she really disliked these two brothers because the Shu brothers of the Xie family stood at Mei Fern's side and were in a good relationship with Fu Sheng and even often helped Fu Sheng to suppress Fu Ming. The reason behind Shen Miao's reminder for Xie Jingxing to find an opportunity to eradicate his own Shu brothers was because she was brooding about the events that happened in her past life. These two people cannot stay alive as they would only be hated. Today she had not yet taken her revenge here, but they had taken the initiative to step forward. But whatever for, she looked at Master Kai's seat and seeing Master Kai's serious face, Xie Chongchao seemed to have soothed him. That is right. Recently the two Xie brothers were preparing to seek a job under Kai Darren and have always taken the initiative to approach Kai Lin. Unfortunately Kai Lin only wanted to get along with Xie Jingxing and did not pay any attention to the two brothers, but was not today a good opportunity. One had to know that in her past lifetime at the end of this year, it was when she was successful in forcing Fu Shuyi to marry her and Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao became Kai Darren's subordinates. Afterwards, 2 years later, the Kai family was embroiled in a corruption case and all their possessions were confiscated and the entire clan was exterminated. There were many things that had changed but there were many that did not. As to those that have changed, the outcome had yet to be seen if it changed. The two Xie family brothers want to use this method to fawn the Kai family and sweep her reputation to the floor. Just as Shen Miao was about to answer, suddenly there was a sudden voice that prodded out. That voice was somewhat lazy and filled with unassailable ridicule. You do not practice with this older brother on normal days at home, but now challenge a little girl. Xie Chongwu, the more you live the more backwards you turn. Xie Jingxing appeared on the stage as he folded his arms and looked at his two momentarily stunned Shu younger brothers with a smile but yet not a smile. How about me challenging both of you? Let me discipline you younger brothers to not learn to be useless scoundrels and be a disgrace outside by fighting with females. He gave a glance at Shen Miao again and said, you can withdraw. Shen Miao stared at him without moving. She had reminded Xie Jingxing and naturally made preparation if Xie Jingxing came up to the stage, but she did not expect that it would be like this and was somewhat between laughter and tears. This seemed like Xie Jingxing is specifically helping her out from this difficulty, but in fact it was not the case. Xie Chongwu did not expect that Xie Jingxing would suddenly rush out. He only did it to fawn the Kai family as he thought that since Shen Miao had already offended the Kai family, as long as he was able to make a fool of Shen Miao and teach her a lesson on behalf of the Kai family would naturally have a good impression of him. Even though it looks like Shen Miao's archery was good, but there were differences between the strength of females and males, not to mention that the reason Kai Lin failed was that he underestimated the enemy first. But Xie Chongwu was not a person who underestimated the enemy, and if possible he would even make a subtle trick to the bow and arrows, and since Shen Miao is not someone who practices martial arts, she would definitely be not able to look out for it. He had calculated this so well but had never imagined that his eldest brother would kill it midway. Not only the two brothers of the Xie family were stunned, everyone in the audience were also shocked. If the Marquis of Linen was present, one feared that he would also be stunned at this moment. In every annual academy examinations, Xie Jingxing did not participate, but despite that, everyone knew that his civil and military skills were good, especially in military topics. Even though it was not tested, but he had followed the army a few times and his performance impressed many. If not fearing that too much limelight would inevitably attract the Imperial's fear, Xie Jingxing's reputation in the battlefield would have exceeded the veteran generals. However, it was not because of dispelling the Imperial's fear that he did not participate in the annual academy examinations. It was purely because he was one who was not bothered about trifling things, and as if born with a few rebellious bones or deliberately went against his father and had no regards for the academy examinations. It was because he did not participate that everyone's eyes fell onto the two Shu sons of the Marquis of Linen. Thus Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao then put in extra hard work and could get a few first ranks in the annual academy examinations. But this year, the Xie family frivolous little Marquis and the two outstanding Shu brothers were competing against one another. Who would win? Although Xie Jingxing's reputation was external, people were always more accustomed to accept things that were in front of them. When Xie Jingxing was in the Ding capital, he would not exhibit his talents. The females could only hear of this youth's talents and accomplishments from their masters. However, hearsay might be false, but witnessing was the truth, so they were a little skeptical. Those who were also young, even though they envied Xie Jingxing's freedom, this envy would have some sense of jealousy. To be able to maybe see Xie Jingxing's spirits pushed down, they were somewhat happy. In addition, the two Xie brothers know how to conduct themselves and many have good relations with them, so these youths sided with Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao. On the contrary, the young ladies were already blushing upon seeing Xie Jingxing's handsome face and with his extraordinary bearing and heroic vibe, which was much different than the soft temperament of the youths in the capital, as if there was some air of being cold-blooded but still carrying a mischievous smile which made him extra charming. Thus, the young ladies all set their hearts on Xie Jingxing. Shen Miao took in the entire scene of the audience expression. Most likely these people felt that Xie Jingxing came out now to challenge his own two younger brothers because of a sudden impulse or that his chill temper flared. But then, Shen Miao smiled slightly. Xie Jingxing was not a person to be trifled with, and since he has already come up on stage in this academy, there was no possibility that he would let his Shu younger brothers retreat. The difference between Xie Jingxing and her was that even though she acts arrogantly on the surface, there was still a rationale to it as she had to slowly scheme to achieve her goal. But Xie Jingxing was only dreaded and fearless because the Marquis of Linen residence had his back. But behind him, was the Marquis of Linen residence the only one? Just as she was pondering, Xie Chongwu at the bottom of the stage said, "Eldest brother, this, I am afraid, is not good." What is not good about it? Xie Jingxing glanced at Shen Miao before looking back at Xie Chongwu and laughed. Or else do you think that Shen Miao is more challenging compared to this Marquis? In a Hong sound, everyone below laughed. Xie Jingxing continued to pick on Shen Miao as he sized her up. No inner strength and no martial arts skills, but you want to challenge her in archery. You are also one who practices martial arts, and to challenge someone without the strength to truss a chicken, I as an elder brother would not understand the rationale. He suddenly smiled as his magnetic voice lowered. But the little girl looks not bad, and if you are challenging due to her looks, then it would be worthy. Like this, all the youths who had taut lips started to laugh, and some even cast a dubious look towards Shen Miao. Indeed, the current Shen Miao had already shed the silly and stupid image, and her facial features seemed to be glowing. She was naturally born with good features, which made her look delicate and adorable, but was very calm, which made one always keep an eye on her. It was only because her past image was too strong that one was not able to change it in a short moment of time. But with Xie Jingxing's words, the last layer of paper was peeled off, and the youths did not hesitate to agree that Shen Miao was a special little beauty. The females were however not happy. Xie Jingxing's words were obviously praising Shen Miao's looks. Shen Yu's and Shen Qing's expressions changed simultaneously, even though their hearts went towards Fu Shuyi, but there were so many handsome and exceptional males in the world, and Fu Shuyi was not the only one. In the Ding capital, Xie Jingxing kind of youth was considered to be unique in the whole of Mingqi, and for this kind of youth to praise that idiot, it made Shen Yu and Shen Qing, who held themselves in higher regards, to be extremely jealous. Yi Peilan frowned and muttered, "Little Xie Marquis must be blind, else how would he think that Shen Miao is good looking? It must be Shen Miao who used some tricks to mystify him." Bai Wei bit her lips and stared at the youth on stage. Shen Miao is truly shameless. Previously she entangled with Prince Ding without letting go, and now she entangled little Xie Marquis. Shen Miao did not know of their discussion, but if she were to know about it, she would only laugh it off. This was because she knew that the purpose of Xie Jingxing saying that sentence was not to tease her or rescue her, but a method to ensure the two Xie brothers would be incapable to refuse and force them to come up. In all fairness, the two brothers of the Xie family would naturally be unwilling to compete with Xie Jingxing. Not mentioning about win or lose, Xie Ding all the while dotted on the D-Sun, so when the Shu and D-Suns challenged one another during the academy examinations, Xie Ding would only think that the brothers were on bad terms. And the biased Xie Ding would certainly be dissatisfied with the two brothers. Therefore, Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao would definitely find ways and means to decline, but Xie Jingxing was also a clever person. He did not use force but goaded them into action. Yes, Xie Chongwu was not willing to challenge Xie Jingxing but wanted to challenge Shen Miao, who did not have the strength to truss a chicken, which was really too strange. His selfishness was almost laid bare in front of everyone. In order to dispel the thought in everyone's mind and also in order to prove that he really was not doing it to build a connection with the Kai family, Xie Chongwu had to go up on stage himself and compete with Xie Jingxing. This was a move without better options, but after he agreed, the hope of using Shen Miao to pull a closer relationship with the Kai family would become fruitless and it would be considered as lost. He braced himself and got up. Since elder brother has spoken, there is no logic for this younger brother not to comply. How would Xie Jingxing give him a chance to grumble? In the battlefield, when he wanted someone to lose, they will lose merciless. One person is not enough. He raised his eyebrow. Third younger brother, come and compete together. Third younger brother, come and compete together. With this sentence from Xie Jingxing, Xie Chongchao in the audience was also stunned. Previously when he saw Xie Jingxing suddenly appear, he thought that Xie Jingxing purposely did so to rescue Shen Miao from a difficult situation, since this the older brother could not be inferred from a normal person's perspective. But Xie Jingxing's words stunned him. The one who went up the stage to challenge was that one person, Xie Chongwu, so what did it had to do with him? But now that Xie Ding was not present, Xie Chongchao could only look at Xie Chongwu and ask softly, "Second older brother, what is going on?" Xie Chongwu was normally shrewder than Xie Chongchao and could hear that there was some anger in Xie Jingxing's words. Xie Jingxing wanted to challenge but then said that he alone was not enough and to also include Xie Chongchao. What was the meaning of this? It could only be to humiliate them two brothers. It was just too arrogant of Xie Jingxing to naturally think that both brothers combined were also not his opponent. Xie Chongwu, who was irritated by Xie Jingxing, had long lost his usual calm. His expression was not good at all and there was some anger in his frown. Eldest brother is full of confidence to say it like this and not even care about his younger brothers. On the stage, Xie Jingxing, who was playing with the fruits that were taken from the examiner's hands, squinted his beautiful eyes and lazily said, "Exactly, this general does not care about you two at all. Since young when both of you were learning martial arts, you have never exchanged notes with this eldest brother." Hearing from others speaking of how striking and brilliant it was, why not let this eldest brother broaden one's horizon today? He continued speaking. The entire audience seemed to have heard the discord between the Xie brothers. One had to know that the news of the residence of Marquis of Linen had already spread out to the entire Mingqi. Everyone had been speculating about the relationship between the brothers, and with Xie Jingxing's indifferent attitude towards the residence of the Marquis of Linen and that he not even spoke to the two Shu younger brothers. To talk down like this, it seems that it did not make any waves. Today was the first time that Xie Jingxing thoroughly discredited his own two Shu brothers in front of everyone. Everyone in the arena started discussing, some had the intention to watch the commotion but were also full of curiosity and were looking forward to the results. Shen Miao looked at that casual attitude of the handsome youth. Xie Jingxing, this person was actually somewhat strange. Seemingly capricious and indulgent, but there was also a clear and straight line directed to him. Now, that two Xie family brothers were led around the nose by him and they were not even aware of it. One was afraid that after this examinations were over, no matter if it was reputation or rationale, there would not be a trace left in them. When Xie Chongwu heard this, he suddenly laughed grimly and said word for word, just exchanging notes, why not? He looked at Xie Jingxing and a variety of moods flashed across the pair of shrewd eyes before he continued, since older brother wanted so, third young brother would also come up. One would be afraid that at that time older brother must not say that younger brothers are bullying. For him to say this much, it meant that if Xie Jingxing lose to them brothers, then it was Xie Jingxing who first provoked and had nothing to do with them, so much so that Xie Jingxing made a joke of himself. Xie Chongchao was somewhat hesitant, but seeing Xie Chongwu giving him a look, he immediately recovered his senses and said, younger brothers will definitely accompany. The challenge round in the academy examinations, the most refreshing thing was that no matter which topic, no matter how many people, even regardless of male or female, there was freedom. Therefore Xie Jingxing's request did not violate anything. Xie Jingxing smiled widely and that evil smile attracted a number of young ladies' eyes. He jokingly said, want to also establish a life and death agreement. Xie Chongchao's and Xie Chongwu's bodies stiffened and their facial expressions were somewhat ugly, but Xie Jingxing lazily said, it is just a joke, it is just an exchange between brothers. There is no need to fight till one dies and the other lives. Shen Miao's lips also gently rose up as Xie Jingxing words were truly sinister. Since the two Xie brothers were already up on stage, there was nothing else for her here. She tidied up her skirt and stepped down herself. Upon reaching the female side of the banquet, Shen Yu and Shen Qing did not come up from afar to speak, but it was Feng and Ning that quickly ran over. She said, your archery skills were actually this good, could it be to inherit father's mantle? Waves started to slightly formed in Shen Miao's heart. Currently towards the Shen family, the Imperial family was glaring like a tiger watching his prey. Not to say her, even her own eldest brother's situation was extremely dangerous. Initially eldest brother's entire life was destroyed by a female and now the Shen family have yet to collapse and fall apart, so she want to use her own methods to protect the Shen family. Just like at the stage a moment ago, those who dare not give the Shen family face, she would not hesitate to give it back 100 times back. But between the three people on stage, who do you think will win? Feng and Ning suddenly changed the topic and rambled on, even though the little marquis of the Xie family has a reputation outside, but we have not witnessed it before and it could be that the rumors are not trustworthy. That Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao got the first rank last year. With 2 people against 1, it would be little Xie Marquis who is in a disadvantage. Xie Jingxing would suffer a disadvantage. Shen Miao broke into laughter in her heart and just shook her head lightly. And Xie Chongwu up on stage also said, it would difficult to appraise if it was 2 of us against 1 of you, so we choose Lancing. This time, Shen Miao really laughed out. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrow, Lancing. Can. The examiners quickly found 3 horses. That high stage was extremely big, thus with good control, it could accommodate the galloping of horses. 3 lances were also thrown into the hands of 3 of them. That Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao had the skill of double lancing. Feng and Ning exclaimed. The 2 brothers Xie Chongchao and Xie Chongwu were very well coordinated with one another and could combine 2 lances to 1, and with this method, they were able to obtain the first rank in lancing. It was also this reason that Xie Chongwu picked this, hoping that they would be able to severely crush Xie Jingxing. But in fact in Shen Miao's eyes, others did not know but she knew. In the memorials of the Mingqi Imperial family, there was a record of Xie family tactics in the battlefield. Xie Jingxing was not a simple person as he was a one-person troop. 1 battle array, 1 lance, 1 horse, 1 person. With these 3, the enemy would be utterly defeated by him. This kind of tactic was only suitable combating a high-ranking military officer, and Xie Jingxing had never once lost before. How could the 2 Xie brothers contend with a nation's high-ranking military officer? Afraid that they would make themselves a laughingstock. How can the 2 brothers and the generals contend with a country? Afraid that one would laugh out today. When the drummer made the first strike down to the drums, the competition started. Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao glanced at one another before their horses, which were side by side, started galloping. They had undergone rigorous trainings, thus their horses' galloping pace were almost exactly the same. Thus when their lances were exactly the same, that if one were to look from afar, it was as if one person was split into 2, making it somewhat fearful. That purple-clad youth lazily raised his hand and the black horse he was on suddenly kicked but started running towards the opposite direction. Everyone was in an uproar, but one could see he horizontally raised the lance in front and his clothes were like a purple lighting cloud, as if it was a storm. His aura of death was overflowing, taking advantage of those handsome features, as if he was a jaded face Asura. During normal times, good-looking and vicious would not be discussed in the same topic. Just as those elders had said, flower fists with fancy footwork. Moves that were good to look at would definitely not be strong, and the truly strong moves must be very ferocious. However, it was not the case for Xie Jingxing. He was born attractive and intelligent with an air of a player, but when he was on the back of a horse with a lance in front of him, he was as if a god of war. That predator temperament was learned through experience in the battlefield and made one unable to look away. The strength and beauty, charm and ruthlessness, he was just like a beautiful wolf that made one feel the grandeur and courage. The purple clothes were like a purple lighting cloud as the horse galloped with his lead. The blood of everyone in the arena seemed to have heated up as they followed the hoofs. He had a strange trait that could attract others to fly. Xie Chongchao's and Xie Chongwu's eyes followed closely that purple-clad youth, and they also separated, one to the right and the other to the left, to outflank Xie Jingxing as they wanted to encircle him. This was really a shameless tactic, as it was clearly 2 against 1. Everyone in the arena cried out in surprise repeatedly as Fu Shuyi said, Xie Jingxing is truly a good seed of the Xie family. How could it be as incredible as you say? Prince Zhou laughed, so stubborn and obstreperous that even Xie Ding cannot manage. One is afraid that he is just a devil incarnate. Fu Shuyi smiled but did not speak. Although Xie Jingxing looked stubborn and obstreperous, he was not one who was easy to deal with. In the face of absolute strength, there was no alternative other than plotting and conspiracies. Xie Jingxing's rationale for putting up a cynical attitude on the surface was that he had nothing to fear. And what made him this fearless was most likely self-confidence. It was different from Prince Zhou's arrogance, and it was also different from Prince Jing's cautiousness. When Fu Shuyi evaluated a person, he would see the entirety of that person. Thus he had many different types of advisors, those who were known talents, those that looked inconspicuous, high-ranking officials who suffered a reversal of fortune, and also some heinous criminals. Only used talents as to him, character, bearing and attitude were not important factors. Such a dazzling person like Xie Jingxing, one truly wished to take him for his own use. Unfortunately, he was from the residence of Marquis of Linen, and as for the residence of the Marquis of Linen, it will not exist in the landscape of Mingqi for too long. Putting down his regretful heart, Fu Shuyi continued to look up towards the youths on stage. Xie Jingxing, who was outflanked by the two Xie brothers, could still nimbly move out of it. As if he was a snake. No matter how tight Xie Chongwu or Xie Chongqiao besieged him, he could easily pass through. The two brothers who worked seamlessly with the two lances had now many holes in their actions with Xie Jingxing's few moves, making it look comical. Only by contesting would there be differentiation between superiority and inferiority. In the process of fighting, which was higher or lower, which was better or worse, could all be seen in a glance. The two brothers of the Xie family were unable to withstand a single blow in front of Xie Jingxing. Goodness. Bai Wei covered her mouth and exclaimed, it obviously looks like little Xie Marquis is playing with the two Xie family brothers. That is right. In comparison, Yi Pei Lan also exclaimed, the lancing of the two brothers of Xie family looks like it was only for show. The females could all see the truth, so how could the males in the banquet not see it? Xie Jingxing could kill with one attack but was deliberately wearing Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongqiao out. It was as if a lion had caught a rabbit but was not in a rush to devour it, and instead was tormenting it to amuse itself. The little Xie Marquis is truly an incredible person. Feng and Ning said, the two brothers of the Xie family are most proud of their lancing, but upon comparison today they are like clouds and dirt apart. Afraid that they would lose miserably today. Shen Miao looked down at the chess game in front. Not at all. How could this be considered as losing miserably? This was just the beginning. She slowly placed the white piece down and the two black pieces were instantly swallowed. A small empty patch appeared on the chessboard. Up on stage, Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongqiao were finally angered. They were played like monkeys by Xie Jingxing for a long time and felt anger and shame burning in their hearts. Xie Jingxing clearly intended for them not to be able to back down, and they knew how bad their performance was just now. A whiff of killing intent appeared in Xie Chongwu's heart. He stared fiercely at the purple-clad youth. The youth on that horse's back was extraordinarily talented, and that smile, yet not a smile, look was very eye-catching. From birth, he was the pride of the residence of the Marquis of Linen. But even so, he still showed disdain towards that residence. No matter if it was the heir status or towards Xie Ding's biases. He was like the king of the jungle, the one overbearing tiger that blocked everyone's way of life. How could one not be hateful towards him? After much discomposure, Xie Chongwu, who had always maintained the perfect mask on his face, finally cracked. He gave a roar and charged straight towards Xie Jingxing with his lance but pierced it viciously to the body of Xie Jingxing's horse. Everyone stood in, amazed. In the lancing competition, there was never anyone who attacked the opponent's horse. As they were saddle horses, by doing so, there was a possibility of injuring the opponent. Upon falling off from a horse's back, a light injury would require rest for an entire month. A serious injury meant that arms or legs were broken, and it was common that one could easily break their neck and die. After all, the academy examination was just a way to assess the students, and there was no need to be any bloodthirst. Thus, there was no such situation like this before. This kind of approach from Xie Chongwu indeed was somewhat of villainous conduct. Xie Chongqiao was shocked by Xie Chongwu's action, but he quickly understood. Almost with no hesitation, he drove his horse directly towards Xie Jingxing direction. It was to trample Xie Jingxing when he falls off to death. These two brothers were crazy. The entire audience had only one though, not mentioning if this matter violated Mingqi's law, but in the Marquis of Linen residence, if the Marquis know about the matter and if Xie Jingxing met with an unexpected misfortune, could the two Xie brothers escape? The females exclaimed, but the males drew a cold breath, and those who were timid had already covered their eyes. Feng and Ning, a delicate female, screamed in fright. Shen Miao's hand stopped as she looked up on stage at the youth. Even though the two Xie brothers were not superior opponents, this part of the chess game was played extremely and utterly bad, and Xie Jingxing will definitely not let go of this opportunity. But one saw that black horse giving a long neigh, and both of its hooves were raised up high suddenly as if it was standing up before struggling crazily. The purple-clad youth made a beautiful stroke with the lance, and it broke when it landed. The movement made the horse's hooves twist, and the horse fell onto the ground, and it never stood up again. Everyone had yet reacted, but Xie Jingxing had already jumped and flew over without a second word. His posture was as if he was a deity flying towards the skies elegantly. With a turn and stretch, the lance had flipped Xie Chongwu onto the ground. The other hand, however, picked up some pieces of stones, and with a casual flick, it landed the knees of Xie Chongqiao's horse, making it collapse. Xie Chongqiao was unable to dodge and fell down in a moment. Both brothers were knocked down of their horses, and it was just in a short moment of time. However, Xie Jingxing lazily stepped on Xie Chongqiao's shoulder and used the other hand that was holding the lance to point at Xie Chongwu's head, and a shadow of a smile appeared. Even dare to sneak attack this older brother, truly overestimated one's capabilities. The graceful poise of the youth on stage was heavenly, and in a short period of time enemies would be utterly defeated. Even though his age was still young, his performance and style was not unlike those who were matured. It was said that if arrogance require ability, then he would definitely have it. As such, one could differentiate superiority and inferiority. The young ladies in the audience were long stunned. They usually moved around in the backyard, and how would they have any opportunity to view such a scene, and would only have the annual academy examinations to feast their eyes. But Xie Jingxing's performance was far more interesting than even the past academy examinations. Young females most probably admire heroes, and coupled with Xie Jingxing's striking appearance and bearing, naturally a number of hearts were captured. There were jealous ones among the youths, but most of them were amazed. Su Mingfeng looked from the Afar pavilion and smiled as he shook his head, so the matter that was worth celebrating was this. This guy is still so arrogant. But Su Mingfeng also knew that today's show was just a tip of the iceberg for Xie Jingxing. He was a person that did not disclose his depth, and for him to be like this today, was it to express something towards the action of that person on top. His expression gradually became serious. He was somewhat unable to clearly see his good friend's decision. That little Xie Marquis is indeed not ordinary. A small look of worship emerged on Feng and Ning's face. I see that there would not be anyone in the younger generation in this Ding capital, or maybe in the entire Mingqi, that shoulder to shoulder could be compared to him. Shen Miao shook her head. Xie Jingxing's expertise was after all not in the test. His expertise is his exquisite combat experience. In fact, if it was not that he was finally harmed by the Imperial family in the past lifetime, with the Xie family's military power and Xie Jingxing's prestige in the army, he would have been able to claim half of Mingqi. It is just, the downfall of the Xie family was still after all a mystery. Shen Miao's heart sighed. In her past life she was so focused on supporting Fu Shuyi, and as for Xie family's matters, she did not have much knowledge of it, and thus she was at a loss of what to do. Xie Chongqiao and Xie Chongwu almost vomited blood because of Xie Jingxing's words. Xie Jingxing's actions looked light and fluttery, but in reality only both of them knew how serious their injuries were. But everyone around did not sympathize with the Xie brothers, as Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao used such a despicable mean of attack. In the academy examinations, the most important thing was being fair and just, so the two Xie brothers' actions not only were looked down by the audience, the examiners up on stage also disdained, and after today, both of their accumulated reputation from before would all disappear. Indeed a good scheme. Shen Miao looked at the youth who was standing and crossing his arms on the stage as she lightly said. Today Xie Jingxing led the two Xie brothers by their noses, thus the two Xie brothers lost their usual sense of propriety and used despicable means to try to harm others. Most likely they were sober now, but it is already too late. To play a trick in the full view of the audiences, the differences between the D and Shu sons of the residents of the Marquis of Linen was tremendously clear today. Xie Jingxing also said to the two of them lazily, victory and defeat is clear, is there anyone who wants to challenge? The entire arena fell silent. The means that Xie Jingxing used to handle Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao were for all to see. It was practically one lance flipping two people over, and these two people were well known. In a short moment, no one in the audience spoke. Xie Jingxing casually threw the lance in his hands and said, since there are not any, then goodbye. Finishing, in a short time of a swish of sleeves, he vanished, and naturally that attracted cries of surprise. This guy's martial arts skills are not weak, Prince Zhou said, but no matter how good his martial arts skills are, he is an unyielding person. Pei Lang however sighed in his heart. This imperial family of Mingqing looked smart, but their sights were short and superficial. This youth depth was not uncovered, and that behavior on stage was definitely done intentionally. Even though he did not know what was the reason behind, but if it was not to establish his prestige, the imperial family would be somewhat concerned. He gently glanced at Prince Zhou and Prince Jing. If the imperial family squarely faced Xie Jingxing, one was afraid that it would be difficult in the future. That was because he was a lion, just like how Shen Miao was before. Although the examiner was helpless towards Xie Jingxing leaving by himself, they still read out that he had earned the first place. The servants of the two Xie brothers quickly supported them down, and they were too embarrassed to say any greetings before they exited the place with their tails between their legs. Thanks to Xie Jingxing's great performance, the few challenges after that made one feel rather tedious, and they were not half as interesting. Most of the audience kept yawning. Shen Yu and Shen Qing kept looking up at Shen Miao from time to time. Today's Shen family, other than Shen Miao, Shen Qing and Shen Yu were considered concealed. Due to the feeling she had for Fu Shuyi in her heart, Shen Qing had hated Shen Miao till she ground her teeth since long ago, as she felt that Shen Miao had snatched things that belonged to her. As for Shen Yu, she was bothered relentlessly at the fact that Shen Miao defeated her, and her heart was 1,000 times not resigned. Towards both of their thoughts, Shen Miao did not know any of it, but even if she knew, she would not be even bothered about it. She instructed Gu Yu to her side and softly said a few sentences to her. Gu Yu's expression became stern after she heard it and soon retreated quietly. At the same time, Prince Yu from the male side of the banquet also waved his hands, and a guard appeared beside him. After listening to Prince Yu's command, that guard quickly disappeared from the banquet. In a distant pavilion, Xie Jingxing finally reappeared by Su Mingfeng's side. Su Mingfeng applauded a few times before looking at him with the side of his eyes, really the limelight in Ding capital today. Small matter. Xie Jingxing was not in the least concerned. You are ready to sort out the two younger brothers? Su Mingfeng asked. It is not your style to suddenly strike. Was given directions by someone. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. Some matters are better to settle as early as possible. I too can no longer wait when it has been stayed for too long. Su Mingfeng frowned. He felt that there were more than just the apparent meaning of Xie Jingxing's words, but he wisely did not question more. Even though he have many years of friendship with this person, but towards this person's mysteries background, he would not probe into it. His line of sight landed for a moment down below before he said, however, the young lady that you just saved seems to be in somewhat trouble. Xie Jingxing's sight swept across and saw at the female side of the banquet there was a guard who handed an invitation-like thing over to the second Furin of the Shen family, Ren Wanyan, but his eyes faintly discernibly glanced over to the purple-clad young lady. Ren Wanyan held the invitation and was somewhat excited as she said, His Highness Prince Yu's action really make this married female officially feel fearful in her heart. Fifth lady, come over here to thank Prince Yu's invite. Shen Miao's eyes concentrated as she stared in focus on Ren Wanyan with a sneer on the corner of her lips. Really want to play the same old tricks? Facing with Shen Yu's and Shen Qing's rejoiced in her misfortune, she lazily stretched her back and her clear eyes suddenly bore a shade of darkness. Very well. Her lips rose. I will definitely thank him properly. A flash of interest flashed in Xie Jingxing's eyes. There is a good show to watch. In the horse carriage on the way back to the Shen residence, Shen Miao sat alone in a carriage as before. Gu Yu and Jing Jie, who were beside her, were all worried for her. That Prince Yu's evil reputation was well known to the people of Mingqi, and he just gave Shen Miao an invitation. Not to say that it was inappropriate for Shen Miao, a young lady, to head over. One could see what kind of idea Prince Yu was playing at. If it was Shen Qin, he would have refused it at the risk of his life. But at the moment, Shen Qin was not in the city, and the two daughters-in-law of the Shen family had sinister motives. Previously, Shen Miao was young, but now that she had reached marriageable age, naturally that idea was planted in her head. Jing Jie endured and tolerated, but finally could not help but said, Young lady, that Prince Yu. What can be done on today's matter? How about getting someone to write a letter to Master? If Master were to know of the matter, he will definitely rush back. Yes, Gu Yu was also deeply worried and sick in her heart. That person does not have a good purpose in coming, and currently the inner courtyard is still. Moreover, today young lady was the limelight. One is afraid that there would be a number of troubles encountered in the residence. She sighed. At Shen Miao's young age, she would not be able to see clearly, thus Gu Yu and Jing Jie, who were specially picked by Shen Furin, were able to see it clearly. The second and third household were clearly jealous of the resounding name of the first household, and thus would secretly trip Shen Miao. With the narrow-minded hearts of the two households and with Shen Miao's limelight today, they were afraid that she would be an eyesore to them. There was nothing fearful about other matters, but if Prince Yu was linked into it, with his devious mind, it would be difficult for Shen Miao to handle all this. After all, the people in the first household were already mostly switched by the two other households. Shen Miao lightly said, What is there to be afraid of? What idea he is playing with would have to depend if he has that ability. She was calm and composed, but the words she spoke were faintly imposing, with a difficult to detect trace of viciousness. Gu Yu and Jing Jie looked at one another. They did not know what was going on, but the panic that they felt dissipated a little and they gradually calmed down. Upon returning to the Shen residence, Shen Miao said that she was tired today and needed to rest, thus she would return first to the west courtyard. Ren Wanyan and Chen Ruchu smiled and said some things to Shen Miao and instructed her to rest well. Perhaps after they knew that it was not good for Shen Miao that Prince Yu had now his sights on her, both of their smiles were unable to conceal the joy of her misfortune. Ren Wanyan even pat on Shen Miao's head and lovingly said, seeing that fifth lady had reached such an age and could be so moving and loving. Not too much time later, you should be married off already. Yes, Chen Ruchu echoed meaningfully, our little five kind of young lady is only compatible to match with nobility. Ordinary people would not be able to marry our little five. A trace of happiness flashed on Shen Yu's face and Shen Qing was unable to hold herself back and said, that is of course. Fifth younger sister would definitely get a noble husband. Finishing, she covered her mouth as she snickered, using a look of understanding on Shen Miao as she laughed. But even with such a suggestive gaze, Shen Miao's expression did not even waver a bit. Shen Qing's smile stiffened. The more Shen Miao was as plain as the clouds and light as the wind, the angrier her heart became. Today, Prince Yu of the first rank sent the invitation to everyone and they all are well aware that he was interested in Shen Miao. But now Shen Miao was not the least emotionally moved, most likely she did not know the serious implication of it. There was a trace of ridicule in her eyes. She was indeed a stupid fool. Shen and older sister have spoken. Shen Miao said without additional comments, talking about age, eldest sister and second older sister are older than me a little. As for finding a husband, naturally it would not be me first. The few people's expression paused before Ren Wanyan smiled, this child. It is because eldest Bo is not in the capital most of the time. Shen's heart ache for you and as for eldest lady and second lady, both me and your third Shen are still in the Ding capital, naturally there is no need to worry. Is it? Shen Miao lightly questioned rhetorically. There was no expression in that pair of clear eyes but it made one's heart tremble. It was as if when that pair of eyes gazed, whatever intent in one's heart would be disclosed. She smiled lightly, since it's Shen's who worry this much about me, in the future, I would have to return a couple. She mentioned it casually but for unknown reasons, Ren Wanyan and Chen Rushu felt a flash of uneasiness in their hearts. But they tossed this absurd idea to the back of their minds as even though Shen Miao was much clever than before, she was still a 14-year-old girl. How big a wave can she create? Moreover, thinking about the matter of Prince Yu, both of them were pleased with themselves. What is fifth lady polite for? We are all a family. Ren Wanyan laughed, since you are tired, then head back to rest first. Your second Shen and I still have matters to do. Gu Yu, Jing Jie, take good care of fifth young lady. Gu Yu and Jing Jie complied and followed Shen Miao out. After they left, Ren Wanyan and Chen Ruchu gave a look at one another and they saw one another's schemes. After half an incense stick 30 minutes, the old Shen Furen of Rong Jingtang frowned. You all are saying that Prince Yu has taken a liking to fifth girl. Shen Yu and Shen Qing were banished to the inner chambers as they were young ladies who cannot participate in these matters. Even so, both of them still went up to the folding screen secretly, regardless of Zhang Mama's discouragement, to eavesdrop on the conversation inside. Exactly. Ren Wanyan's face was full of smiles but her words were pompous. Fifth girl's results were so impressive in today's academy examinations that it made Prince Yu to have a whole new level of respect for her. Since an invitation was sent, it must mean that there is an intention to obtain fifth girl. This daughter-in-law sees that our Shen residents may be able to produce a Wang Fei. When Chen Ruchu heard it, her mouth was pulled back a bit. This Ren Wanyan said it so high-sounding, but that Prince Yu's interest on Shen Miao did not mean that she would be married officially. Even if she would be married officially, with Shen Miao's life, no one knew how many days she could survive. One was afraid that she could only be a Wang Fei for a few days before the fragrance diminished and the jade perished. After all, that Prince Yu's infamous reputation was something that everyone in Ding capital knew. Hearing this, old Shen Furen's expression instead dropped a little, as in her heart, she naturally did not want the first household to do well. On what basis did that deaf person's son be more outstanding than hers? Previously when old General Shen was alive, he was biased towards the first household and now that the first household would produce a Wang Fei this made her feel unhappy. She remarked at once, how could fifth girl be a Wang Fei with her temperament? Eldest girl or second girl are still good enough. Old Shen Furen spent all year round in the inner courtyard and only knew how to enjoy. Thus she was totally ignorant to the matters outside. Hearing her words, Chen Ruchu's and Ren Wanyan's expression changed uniformly. Shen Yu and Shen Qing who were hiding behind the folding screen jumped in shock as both of them knew even though old Shen Furen did not know. Once entering the residence of Prince Yu, there was only the circumstance of being tortured till death and it was a hellish fire pit. Ren Wanyan quickly spoke, Mother, it is not like this. We naturally wish fifth girl, this young lady, well, even though His Highness Prince Yu of the first rank is a widower, age-wise he is somewhat older and his reputation is not very good, but his family is good. She thought about something and her lips raised. In the future when seventh son grows up, it would be extremely good to have His Highness Prince Yu's care and guidance. If fifth daughter encounters any mishap, His Highness Prince Yu would compensate and take greater care of seventh son. To actually use Shen Miao's life in exchange for Shen Yuanbo's future, Chen Ruchu looked at her second sister-in-law, it was truly a good scheme. Ren Wanyan had said it like this, old Shen Furen was not so stupid enough not to hear the intention behind the words. Listening to Ren Wanyan's tone, that Prince Yu was a devilish figure so if Shen Miao ended up in his hands, it would only be that the official name sounds nice. The real benefit was for the Shen family. As for Shen Yuanbo, he was old Shen Furen's precious. To use Shen Miao to pave the way for Shen Yuanbo, this idea suited old Shen Furen's thoughts. With that being the case, then what you both said is also good. It seems that Prince Yu is fifth girl's husband. Old Shen Furen's skin was extremely thick. To sit upright and still to even say it like this, a trace of contempt flashed in Chen Ruchu's eyes. Mother also felt that it is good. Ren Wanyan's ability to spout nonsense with her eyes open was high as she immediately replied, the husband's family that this daughter-in-law picked for little five, naturally would not be of a low position. The branch of the prince of first-rank residence is a very high one. Old Shen Furen heard what was said and nodded her head when she thought about something and asked, did the prince's residence dispatch someone to intercede? Ren Wanyan's face shook. Even though she was also not someone who was easy to deal with, she did not think that this old woman would be so impatient, just itching to quickly decide on Shen Miao's marriage. Of course it would be better to quickly get this marriage over and done with, else when Shen Qin returns, it would be troublesome. But even if the dust had settled, Shen Qin might not even let Shen Miao marry into the residence of the prince of first rank. Thus, it was necessary to use some unusual means. Fortunately the people from the residence of the prince of first rank did not seem to intend on a legal marriage. That Prince Yu was fond of playing tricks by several means. Naturally it was not known to anyone. Mother, it is still too early now. Ren Wanyan smiled as she said, little five is still young and there is no rush. If one were to set it up then others would inevitably talk. Let both of them get along first, after the couple is harmonious. When little five herself is willing, then we would talk about marriage. Like this, there would not be anyone who would say we forced little five. Even if Shen Miao was a fool, it would not be possible for her to be harmonious with Prince Yu. Doing this would be nothing more than covering up ugly intentions with beautiful words. There was no way of knowing whatever would happen in the middle that would lead to the result. Chen Ruchu smiled quietly but did not speak, even though she wanted Shen Miao to fall into bad luck in her heart, but her personality was still prudent. This kind of matter that stands out would be better to be handled by Ren Wanyan. In the future if Shen Xie really investigated then there would be nothing to be pursued at her end. Sitting on top of a mountain to watch the tigers fighting something Chen Ruchu was good at. Behind the screen, Shen Yu's and Shen Qing's hearts had some fear. They did not expect that in just a few short sentences, the greatest matter of Shen Miao's life would be decided. As far as a young female was concerned, a husband represented the happiness and fortune of the next half of her life but for Shen Miao, she was destined to be unfortunate. However there was no trace of compassion in Shen Yu's and Shen Qing's hearts. In the official circle, Shen suppressed their fathers. In status-wise, Shen Miao suppressed both of the sisters. In addition to old Shen Furen's influence, the first household had become a big eyesore, so now that they see Shen Miao being out of luck, they could only rejoice at her misfortune. Even though old Shen Furen knew nothing about managing a household, but she was very proficient in the fights between the females at the inner courtyard, especially these kind of shameful and secrets methods. That she could in the beginning to go from a little songstress to become the head matriarch of the General Shen's residence was not only based on a seductive face, but also that her means and methods must naturally be vicious. Therefore when she heard Ren Wanyun's words, she understood the intention behind them and smiled. Oh. Like this then let fifth girl get closer to Prince Yu. It is indeed that this kind of thing would be better, else if we really force fifth girl, when the eldest return and get angry, it would not be pleasant. Her current complexion was already harsh. To make such a look of love and affection, it would only make one feel that it was the smiling face of a weasel with ill intentions. Shen Yu and Shen Qing broke into a cold sweat and quickly retreated far away from the folding screen. In the west courtyard under the lamp, Shen Miao was quietly sitting. There was a white parchment that was placed in front of her, but there was nothing on it. The ink was ground and the brush was prepared. She seemed to want to write, but after a moment she gave a light sigh and kept that white parchment. Even though it was good to prepare for a rainy day, but now she was just an unmarried female and currently she depended on nothing more than the information she previously had access to. But these things would not be utilized to its fullest at her current position. As expected, the road had to be walked a single step at a time. Gu Yu and Jing Jie saw her sighing and thought that she was thinking about the matter of Prince Yu. Gu Yu came forward to console. Young lady, be at ease. If that side is really malicious, these servants would risk one's life to protect young lady. If it is really not workable, there are still people who have close relationship with master in the capital. At worst. Shen Miao shook her head. The residence of the prince of first rank has a high position and great powers. Moreover, there is still the imperial family's protection. No matter how good a relation father have with others, it would also not be as good as to offend the imperial family just to protect me. In addition, the imperial family was glaring like a tiger watching his prey on the Shen family. If one were to suddenly take action without careful consideration, it would lead the imperial family to be more suspicious on Shen colluding with others. After all, towards any emperor, it would be a bad thing when their officials are too close with one another. Or else, just write a letter to master. Jing Jie said, even though master is burdened by military affairs, but eldest young master is only attached to the army and did not have any orders. If he returns to the Ding capital, there would not be any punishments. With eldest young master's presence, he would be able to protect young lady. It would take more than a month for eldest brother to rush back from the northwest region. How would that be on time? Do you think they would be able to endure that long? Shen Miao said it plainly. Shen Shen's deterrent force would only make them take action in the shortest possible time. Once raw rice were cooked in with some frightening words that would be able to make her comply obediently to the manipulations. Shen Miao perhaps would, but the Empress Shen of the inner palace, who bathed in bloody tears, would never. Then what can be done? Gu Yu's and Jing Jie's facial expressions both changed greatly. Even though they knew that this matter was anything but good, they did not think that it was that serious. Prince Yu's means, no matter what kind of young lady he was interested in, even if they were from high-ranking officials, once defiled meant that they were defiled. Even if at the end the imperial family come out to console, there was nothing that can be done. It was because this person's means were so evil and perverse, one may not be able to see it on surface, and the ones suffering were still those young females. What is to be done? Others are always unreliable. Shen Miao looked at the jumping fire. It is still better to depend on oneself. But young lady, Gu Yu was somewhat anxious. How could Shen Miao protect herself now? If it was others, family members would be able to resist a little, but second and third households people would have mostly likely formed an alliance with one another. I naturally have my own ways. Shen Miao played with the paperweight in her hands. The residence of the prince of first rank relied on the emperor's kindness and the imperial family's protection only. If the imperial family was unwilling to protect him, how would it be like if at the same time a few enemies came knocking? A residence of the prince of first rank that lost the imperial family's protection will be just worthless mud. Prince of the first rank, in the end he had some blood relations with the imperial family, so it would start with him first. Conveniently, she looked outside and saw a vague fat figure outside the window moving. If it was not Gui Mama, who would it be? And also take this passing opportunity to clean out all these unclean and unclear things in the west courtyard. After this year chrysanthemum banquet, the main names that were discussed in the streets of Ding capital finally changed. The little Xie Marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Linen used an extremely strong and elegant attitude to extinguish the awe-inspiring presence of the two said Shu brothers. Even though his actions were arrogant but with a graceful bearing that was revealed in that short period of time, it made one understand that the name he got in the battlefield, Jaded Face Asura, was not a false reputation. The other person was the idiot, Shen Miao. It was as if one had shed one's mortal body and exchanged one's bones, or it was that finally the blood of the Shen family was aroused. The stupid and cowardly Shen Miao faded away as she confronted Kai Lin with composure during archery, and when she was forcing for submission, she revealed a vicious temperament. It made all her peers somewhat fearful. As such in Guang Wentang, those who previously mocked her had now all curbed it. When Kai Lin returned to Guang Wentang and faced Shen Miao, he just stared at her unpleasantly but unprecedentedly did not act rashly at all. It was assumed that day that Shen Miao had given him some trauma. Feng and Ning looked at Kai Lin's appearance and laughed, did not think that overlord would actually be somewhat afraid of you now. Shen Miao glanced at Kai Lin and the latter quickly looked away with a somewhat fearful look. She laughed in her heart in spite of herself. Kai Lin, in her eyes, was just an arrogant and stubborn young master, and she did not want to waste any more energy on the matter. Moreover, the Kai family was nearing to their annihilation days, thus this noble young master would need to suffer a lot in the future. However, I heard that even though the two Xie brothers were injured seriously, the Marquis of Linen did not fault little Xie Marquis at all, and instead invited a physician to tend to the two brothers' injuries, but in fact can be considered for both as a confinement. Feng and Ning exclaimed, it seems that it is indeed true that the Marquis of Linen is biased towards the D-son. Shen Miao asked, where did you hear it from? Eavesdropping on my parents' conversation. Feng and Ning was somewhat proud, but if it was another person, most likely would also dote on little Xie Marquis. Not to say about him, but he is born from Princess Yu Qing with imperial bloodline. Shen Miao eyebrows raised. Honestly speaking, she always felt that the death of Princess Yu Qing of the residence of the Marquis of Linen was somewhat strange. From the attitude of the Marquis of Linen to the two Xie brothers, there was no reason when he knew of Princess Yu Qing's death, that he would still let that Madame Fang live till now. As she was pondering, she saw Pei Lang walking in. There was a gentle smile on Pei Lang's face, and just as he was looking over at Shen Miao's direction, his eyes came upon Shen Miao's gaze, and Pei Lang could not help but be slightly surprised for a moment. During the chrysanthemum banquet, Shen Miao's performance had made Pei Lang to put away the scorn in his heart. From then onwards he started to feel and observe that Shen Miao was different from normal, and he also felt that Shen Miao was paying attention to him secretly. Even though he did not know why, it made this young teacher feel somewhat uncomfortable, as if something was targeting him. But thinking that Shen Miao was just a little young female, no matter how powerful she was, he felt that he was being oversensitive. Why do you always stare at him? Fang and Ning curiously asked before she thought of something and said in shock, could it be that you fall for someone again? As of now, Shen Miao had not even mentioned anything about Fu Shuyi, and her cold icy look was like she had forgotten about that person, which made those who were watching the commotion feel there was some reason for it. They were thinking that most likely Shen Miao knew that she was not worthy of the imperial family and had given up that thought, and that could be seen as she did not chase after Fu Shuyi during the chrysanthemum banquet. Even though Pei Lang's status was a little low, but he had a graceful bearing and was talented, thus it was natural for young females to like him. Shen Miao's head was somewhat aching as she recovered her sight, of course not. The only thing she was thinking was that since Pei Lang did not speak about the circulation of law, Fu Shuyi had not taken him to heart. But this person was still a great trusted advisor, and in future he would be used by Fu Shuyi. Shen Miao's expression turned serious as she was afraid that there would be endless of trouble in the future. Right now she had no ability to assassinate Pei Lang without anyone knowing, so she had to find another way. The Baishanglu of Ding capital was filled with song and dance. Even though it was in the daylight, the gauzes that decorated throughout and the luminous pearls that were placed made the entire roof to be filled with brilliant lights and vibrant colors. With the sound of music curling up, there would always be one that would stop and look in envy. Not because of other things, but when ordinary wealthy people enter Baishanglu, they also felt somewhat cash-strapped, as even a small pot of tea was expensive. It was indeed a money-squandering establishment. At this moment, leaning against the window sat a middle-aged man clad with luxurious clothes. This man's clothes were excellent, but he was born with a dark and sinister look. Under his robes, that left leg was empty, and it was no one else but Prince Yu. Spoken clearly to that Shen family. After a while he asked with a gloomy tone. 39 to 55. Reporting back to your highness, it has already being arranged with the second Furin of the Shen family. 3 days later the womenfolk of the Shen family will head to Wolong Temple to offer incense, at that time. 3 days. Prince Yu frowned and a trace of displeasure flashed in his eyes. He then waved his hands. Go and prepare the things that should be prepared. It has been a long time since Benwei and Ji have met such an interesting one. After so many years, his sexual appetite had gotten crueler and perverse, and there were countless of females that had died in his hands. However, no matter how these females resisted, they would not be able to create any waves. In the entire Mingqi, he had already know about Shen Shen's fierce name and did not know what kind of taste that daughter of the awe-inspiring great general would have. Moreover, in that chrysanthemum banquet, Shen Miao revealed her ruthlessness, which filled him up with interest. A wild cat who only knew how to resist would perhaps be tastier than those blocks of beautiful wood. He licked his lips and a flash of licentious perverseness crossed his eyes. In the room that was nearest to him, sat a white-clad male in front of a glass table. He was about 20 years old and was born handsome but had a pretty gentle disposition. After hearing those words for a while, he spoke to the person in front as if he had watched a good show. It seems that the beauty you saved from before would most likely be in trouble again. Facing him, the purple-clad youth sat lazily and casually said, the Shen's family tree is a tall one that attracts the wind, and this blame belonged to Shen Shen, his fault to carry. Today it was only a test. There would finally be one day in that no one in the Shen family would be safe. The white-clad male paused and suddenly looked at the youth. Third Xie, why did you injure the Shu brothers in the academy examinations? Could it be that your plans are going to be moved in advance? The one sitting opposite was not someone else but Xie Jingxing. His lips raised as he smiled. So what if it is advanced? So what if it was not advanced? If you were to take action in advance, will they know? The white-clad male asked. Gao Yang, you do not understand one thing. Now here, only I have the final say. Xie Jingxing said plainly, by dragging it longer, it would instead be unfavorable to me. If the mountain does not come to me, then I will go to the mountain. Finishing the last word, his eyes looked much more serious, like it was not a 17 or 18-year-old youth. That male, so-called Gao Yang, was stunned in surprise for a moment before laughing bitterly. Never mind, I only came over to see you. In fact, I really have no self-confidence to stop you. He then changed the conversation. However, in 3 days' time, are not you also heading to Wolong Temple to investigate some stuff? Maybe you can once again save a beauty. He laughed mischievously. Gao Yang, your foresight is as usual but bad. Xie Jingxing raised an eyebrow. It is not good to provoke that girl from the Shen family. After class, Shen Yu walked to Shen Miao and smiled as she said, today young lady Yi has invited eldest sister and me to her residence, so we will not be heading back with you. Fifth younger sister, you should go back first. Yi Peilan and Shen Yu were naturally close with one another and would often send an invitation to them but excluded only Shen Miao. It was so common that it was nothing out of the ordinary. Hearing that, Shen Miao did not have any reaction and only made a sound of agreement. These recent days the Shen family's attitude towards Shen Miao was extremely warm and lively, most likely because they already had a play in mind. Shen Miao was also too lazy to care about them now that there were matters of vital importance and naturally not these kind of trivial stuffs. Upon returning in the horse carriage, it must pass through the most prosperous street of Ding capital. Gu Yu said, Gui Wafang is in front. Does not young lady like the pastry from there the best? This servant will go and buy some back. Go then, Shen Miao said with a smile. After Gu Yu got off the carriage, Jing Jie opened the carriage's curtain to look out and made a sound of surprise after looking at a certain area. Shen Miao looked towards the direction of her gaze and saw that the horse carriage stopped at the side of Gui Wafang, in front of a pawn shop. At the moment there was a crowd of people who seemed to be arguing about something. The worker from the pawn shop showed signs of impatience and even his voice could be heard clearly by Shen Miao. I already said that it will be 12 liang if you want to sell or not. It is just a sword, this gentleman better not trouble us. It seems that shopkeeper Yu is not able to do business. Jing Jie said. Shen Miao had seen it through. A pawn shop was a business and naturally it would push the price down a little and obviously this would make the person who came to pawn their items unable to accept the prices but still unwilling to leave. Thus turning into a deadlock situation. There is nothing worth to look at. Seeing that Shen Miao's gaze moved, Jing Jie put the curtain down. After a short moment, Gu Yu carried a large paper bag back and Jing Jie opened the curtain to let her in. During the short time during the opening of the curtain, Shen Miao's gaze landed outside the carriage and saw that the person who was arguing with the pawn shop's worker turned around and walked out from the crowd and he had a sword in his arms. Most likely he did not make the transaction and was disappointed. When Gu Yu boarded the carriage, she wanted to close the carriage's curtain but it was stopped by Shen Miao as she was staring attentively at the person who was carrying the sword. It was a young man and his attire was also common like his looks. Seeing their young lady staring at this unfamiliar male, Gu Yu and Jing Jie were unable to make head or tail of it. Shen Miao frowned. Why was this person so familiar? That young man shook his head and sighed before looking deeply at the sword in his embrace. He clenched his teeth and turned to head towards the pawn shop. Seemingly he finally decided to make this unsatisfying transaction. Gu Yu, just at the moment when he turned, Shen Miao suddenly shouted, go down and stop him. Tell him that I want that sword of his. Young lady, Jing Jie and Gu Yu looked at her in surprise. They really did not know why did Shen Miao did this for. Quickly, Shen Miao coldly said. Seeing her serious look, Gu Yu did not dare to ask more and immediately jumped off the carriage and headed towards that young person. When the young person took a step, he could hear someone behind him speaking, gentlemen, do hold on. He turned around and saw a female clad in a maid's uniform rushing towards him before smiling, as gentleman going to the pawn shop to pawn the sword that you are holding. The young person was startled for a moment but did not conceal it and said, yes. That female continued speaking, as it turns out, my young lady wants the sword that you are holding. Is gentleman willing to go ahead with this transaction? The young person looked at the other person and even though he saw that the female's expression was not fake, he still shook his head. This sword of mine is not the refined type and is more on the practical side. If your young lady wants, it is better to go to the weaponry shop to forge one. He was actually amazed in his heart as how would normal females be interested in swords. It was nothing more than seeing it as a toy to play. Unfortunately his sword was too sharp and it would not be good to accidentally hurt oneself. Gu Yu's expression became slightly relaxed and her heart sighed in relief. This person in front obviously was in need of money but to even think first for the sake of others, it seems that he was also an above-board person. Previously when Shen Miao oddly wanted to buy this person's sword, she was somewhat worried but now it seemed that the other person was not someone bad. Thinking of this, Gu Yu's expression was much softer as she said, my young lady sincerely want to make this transaction with gentlemen. Gentlemen may wish to take a step aside to talk. The other person most probably did not expect that Gu Yu was this stubborn. Glancing at the pawn shop, he then nodded helplessly, all right then. Until they reached an alley without anyone, one could see a carriage stopped in the middle of it. Gu Yu went to the front of the carriage and softly said, young lady, he is here. The young person walked to the front of the carriage and hesitated before finally cupping his hands. This young lady, this subject sword is not suitable for females to use and it is far too sharp, thus it would easy to injure oneself. It is. What is your name? His words hardly finished when a female voice was heard from the carriage. This voice sounded like the person's age was not old but there was an unspeakable feeling, as if it was a noble who had experienced many ups and downs of life, making one unable to figure out the person's age in a short moment of time. This subject is Mo Qing. After hesitating for a moment, the young person cupped one of his fist in the other hand. After this sentence, there was no response after a long time. Just when that young man, Mo Qing, and Gu Yu were somewhat puzzled, the female voice from inside said, I am not interested in your sword. It is just broken iron for me and has no meaning. Hearing those words, a trace of anger appeared on Mo Qing's face and he spoke, could it be that young lady is playing with Mo Qing? Even though this sword is average but it was forged by a famous swordsman and have accompanied me for many years. If young lady called this one here to insult, then forgive this one for not playing along. After finishing his words, he wanted to turn and leave but when he lifted his leg, he heard a sigh that came out from the horse carriage. That sigh was lightly floating past but seemed to contain inexplicable emotions, pulling one's heart. Mo Qing, you are really short on money. The person in the horse carriage said. Mo Qing was surprised for a moment. He did not know why but when the other person called his name, there was a strange feeling that arose in his heart. This feeling seemed to feel very familiar but there were some unfathomable mystery to it. But in the moment when he heard the other person speak, his footsteps could not help but automatically stop, as if every single word that person say was something he could not refuse. Your sword, to me, is not worth a mention but your sword skills are however worth hundreds, thousands of gold. Mo Qing was stumped for words as he shook his head, young lady has flattered. This subject is only an ordinary person. His heart was however surprised. How did this person know that his sword skills were outstanding? A hero without a dime is not a hero at all, to even sell away one's precious sword that accompanied one for so many years. This kind of days would really be unworthy of your sword skills. The curtain on the horse carriage suddenly opened and out walked a purple-clad young female. Her looks were tender and delicate but there was a type of rare grandeur and dignity in her brows. Mo Qing, are you willing to sell your entire body filled with martial arts skills to our Shen family of military lineage? She asked with a smile but her eyes had a touch of joy like meeting an old friend. The commanding officer of the guards, Mo Qing of the previous lifetime. Trust that you were well since we last met. This young lady, Mo Qing was slightly stunned as he frowned while looking at the young female in front. He knew that there were wealthy families that would not treat human lives as lives and would buy a servant like buying common livestock. At this moment this young female's intention was most likely that she viewed him as a servant and a sense of displeasure formed in his heart. But after seeing the other person's eyes, that displeasure was like a fog that instantly dissipated. When he saw this other person's eyes, they were not arrogant or filled with disdain, but there were in them a touch of gratitude and respect which made him unable to guess. He unconsciously blurted out, has this young lady seen this subject somewhere before? Shen Miao lightly sighed, no. Then why? This person's brows are upright and have an extraordinary bearing, naturally is a person with favorable luck. But at this moment one would need to sell off one's precious sword that had accompanied for many years so one was obviously at the end of the route. You are in dire straits and in an urgent need of money but if one were to give you the money, it would still not solve future problems. I as a daughter of the formidable great general would be able to introduce you to my father upon his return to the capital at the end of the year. With one's good martial arts skills, it would be a pity if it was buried. General Shen, Mo Qing was suddenly surprised. He totally did not think that the young female in front of him would actually be Shen Shen's daughter. Shen Shen's reputation in Mingqi was something everyone knew since he was the center stone of the battlefield. Males wanted accomplishments. If one were to follow this kind of general, Mo Qing felt as if the blood that was flowing in his body got much hotter. It is just. According to the rumors in the capital, Shen Miao was an idiot and even though there was restoration in the chrysanthemum banquet, but the people who saw it were still very little. At this moment when one see it, the rumors were not necessarily true. If young lady is truly willing to recommend this subject, then this subject would naturally not decline. If there is an opportunity in the future, one would definitely return deep gratitude till death. Mo Qing also had a straightforward and magnanimous temperament thus he would not shirk off this opportunity. Seeing this scenario, Shen Miao smiled lightly and took a silver tail out from her sleeve and threw it to Mo Qing. She said, I do not need your deep gratitude till death and only treat it as if you have sold your body of martial arts skills to me. Father will only return when the year ends so in this period you would have to follow me back to the Shen residence. I would pretend to make you a guard in Shen residence but you must secretly protect me. When these words were heard by Mo Qing, he naturally was somewhat surprised. Mo Qing had also heard that in the large family, on the surface it looked like bouquets of flowers and piles of brocades but privately there would be endless schemes and tricks. Seeing Shen Miao even mentioning about protection, he knew that the young female was not as comfortable as she looked like in the Shen residence. There was some shock in Mo Qing's heart since Shen Miao was Shen Shen's daughter, why would the situation be difficult? But because he had a calm temperament, he did not question but only said, would follow young lady's instruction. Take this money first to settle the emergency. Shen Miao continued, once your matter is completed, you must come to the Shen residence within 3 days. I will naturally arrange your position. Mo Qing once again cupped one fist in the other hand. He had a strong air of the pugilist world and it was only when he left that Gu Yu and Jing Jie frowned. Jing Jie said, young lady, this person's background is unknown and if he has bad intentions, when he enters the Shen residence, one is afraid. Shen Miao headed towards the carriage, what is there to be afraid of? This kind of person is even cleaner than the people in the courtyard. Now the west courtyard was infested with second and third household spies and there were a pathetic number of her own people. Moreover this Mo Qing was naturally not a stranger. Shen Miao sat on the horse carriage and sighed lightly in her heart. She did not think that she would be able to meet Mo Qing here after the rebirth of a lifetime. This Mo Qing was the commanding officer of the Imperial Guards. Originally he was recommended by Shen Qin as he had superior martial arts skills. When Shen Miao went to the Qin country as a hostage for those years, Mo Qing protected her as a bodyguard. If Mo Qing was not there to assist her, it would have been very difficult to come back intact from the dangerous Qin country. Mo Qing was loyal to Shen Qin, so naturally he pledged allegiance to Shen Miao, but unfortunately when Shen Miao returned back to Mingqi, because of the fights between her and Mei Furan schemed against Mo Qing and placed a charge on him of molesting palace maids. Fu Shuyi had long wanted to get rid of Shen Qin's people, thus even with Shen Miao's thousands of blocking measures, it was still of no avail. She could only watch as Mo Qing died under those unwarranted charges. Now to be able to see Mo Qing again, she did not know that Mo Qing was in such a destitute situation. But because of Mo Qing's hard-pressed situation, he could be reined in so easily. Shen Miao understood Mo Qing's temperament, he was the most loyal and upright. The trip to Wolong Temple in 3 days' time, she initially was thinking of using other methods, but with Mo Qing, it would be more convenient. Upon returning to the Shen residence because of Shen Yu and Shen Qing going to the Yu residence as guests, there was only Shen Miao in the residence. When she just arrived in the west courtyard, Gui Momo came up and smiled with full of flattery. Young lady has returned. This old servant has let the kitchen maid some sweet soup. Does young lady want to have some? All right, Shen Miao said. Seeing that Shen Miao, who treated her coldly these days, started to pleasantly warm up, Gui Momo's heart was joyous as she quickly said, this old servant will bring it over. When Gui Momo brought the sweet soup over, Shen Miao was already in the room for a while. Gui Momo placed the bowl of sweet soup carefully on the table and said with a smile, young lady, the things for the trip to Wolong Temple 3 days later are all prepared already. Is there anything else required? Old Shen Furan previously had made arrangements to go to Wolong Temple 3 days later to pray for peace and tranquility for the entire Shen family. Ren Wanyan would be bringing the 3 young ladies along and the rest of the people would not need to follow. Gui Momo was kept busy for these few days due to this matter. Shen Miao swept a look at her and said with a not heavy or light tone, Momo is really enthusiastic about this matter. Gui Momo froze and then smiled. It is rare that young lady get to go that far. Naturally preparations have to be comprehensive. Naturally it would be comprehensive with Momo following. Shen Miao suddenly smiled. When Gui Momo saw that smile, it however made her heart uneasy. Second Furan arranged appropriately so naturally there would not be any mistakes. Gui Momo said. Would then trouble Gui Momo to thank second Shen for me. Shen Miao nodded her head, you can withdraw. Hearing this, Gui Momo then gave a sigh of relief and quickly said a few words before withdrawing. She did not know the reason but the current Shen Miao had become strong and when she was with her, there seems to be an invisible coercion force which extinguished much of her arrogance. However after she was out of the door, her spine straightened up and she looked at the room with disdain before speaking with a soft voice that only she herself could hear. After 3 days, see if you dare to be impudent in front of this old one. In the room, Shen Miao held the bowl of excessively sweet soup in her hands and walked to the window. With a throw of her hand, half the sweet soup fell onto the plants by the window. Young lady, really want to go to that Wolong Temple? Bai Lu asked hesitantly. Have to go, Shen Miao answered. It was this time during her previous life that she inadvertently heard Rong Jingtang's maids talking and came to know that old Shen Furan intended to marry her off to Prince Yu. The night before going to Wolong Temple, she fled to the residence of Prince Ding and threw herself in. Even though that decision was wrong, it accidentally prevented another disaster. And now, she will not flee nor hide and go to Wolong Temple. Whoever wanted to see a show of her, she will make a botched up show out of the person. Earlier than Shen Miao had expected, on the second day Mo Qing came to the Shen residence to be a guard. Shen Miao had Shuang Zhong bribe the housekeeper beforehand and they only knew he was a faraway cousin of Shuang Zhong. Because the guards were divided by a number of ranks, Mo Qing could only become a guard at the outermost side, thus there were not much conditions for him to stay. Time passed very quickly and soon it was 3 days later. In the morning of the 3rd day, Ren Wanyan arranged everything appropriately and let the maid by her side, Shang Lan, go to Shen Miao to settle some arrangements. Before leaving, everyone also went to Rong Jingtang. Old Shen Furan said some words solemnly and the summary of it was to ensure everyone would behave properly. On normal days one would not go to Wolong Temple to burn incense because Wolong Temple was located in a remote area. Even though it was a famous place but the incense was not as thick as of those who were located nearer to the city. But no one knew for what reason this time it had to be so far away. Shen Qing appeared to be filled with joy as she spoke about how she would definitely pray for old Shen Furan and Shen Yuan Bo to Buddha. Old Shen Furan heard that it was for her and her attitude towards Shen Qing softened up much more. In this journey, there was also some guards that were brought along to protect the safety of the Shen residence's young ladies. Shen Miao stood in front of the horse carriage but remained motionless. Ren Wanyan saw it and asked with a frown, why is fifth lady not moving? Just felt that the list of guards is short. To prevent any accident, second Shen may wish to bring a few more guards along. Shen Miao said. Ren Wanyan frowned. She did not expect that Shen Miao would raise this issue at this time. But everything was already arranged so Ren Wanyan smiled. Fifth lady, the people we are bringing are truly a lot. One cannot just bring along all the guards in Shen residence. When the number of people is too large, it would become inconvenient to just remain as it is. But Shen Miao was insistent and kept shaking her head. When Shen Yu and Shen Qing saw it, Shen Yu did not say anything but Shen Qing was unpleased and followed up with words. Our Shen residence is not the imperial family, just how big an entourage does fifth younger sister want? When eldest Bo goes out, he is not as picky as this. Once again, she brought up Shen Qin name to talk. When she finished talking, Shen Miao took a glance at her. That one glance was flutteringly light but it made Shen Qing suddenly felt cold throughout her entire body. Just add 2 more. Shen Miao lifted her hands and pointed at the 2 guards by the door, just them would be fine. Seeing that Shen Miao did not bring many and only wanted to increase it by 2 headcount, Ren Wanyan was relieved as she did not want to delay too much time on this matter. 2 more people would not affect the overall situation but Ren Wanyan put on a face full of difficulty and said, Fifth lady, you are really. Never mind, when have second Shen not consent to your words? Up to you then. She instructed Shang Lan, who was beside her, go and call those 2 servants over there to follow us out of the city. Thanking second Shen, Shen Miao's lips hooked up to form a smile. Seeing that Ren Wanyan at the end still consent to Shen Miao's idea, Shen Yu only looked at Shen Miao strangely but Shen Qing fiercely stomped her feet and glared at Shen Miao before turning away to leave. In the horse carriage, Shen Qing was deliberately not speaking with Shen Miao and even though Shen Yu spoke to Shen Miao, her words to some degree were sounding her out. Shen Miao was too lazy to deal with her thus she barely said anything. It was however Ren Wanyan who was in high spirits all the way and when she talked to Shen Miao, it looked very intimate. If it was the usual, most likely Shen Miao would also admire this kind second Shen but now seeing this woman, every actions and gestures were ugly and pretentious performances. After seeing such stuff in the inner palace, it was enough for her. Setting off in the morning till the evening, then they finally arrived at the destination, Yongjingfeng Peak. Wolong Temple was located at the halfway mark of Yongjingfeng. The mountain was high and the valley was deep. If there was a spring nearby, it would be a pleasant scenery as there were flowers and lush foliage everywhere. But it was currently early autumn and the leaves were withering, which added a few touches of desolation. Because Yongjingfeng was far from the Ding capital, the road to Wolong Temple was hard to reach, and other than the people who head up to offer incense and the especially devoted ferns who come here, normal people would not stay there. When Shen Miao and the rest alighted from the horse carriage and reached the entrance of Wolong Temple, they were able to see a young monk sweeping the floor in front of the huge temple. It was extremely peaceful. It is sure peaceful here. Shen Yu lightly chuckled. Shen Qing shrugged her hold and seemed to want to complain, but she suddenly thought about something and restrained herself. Ren Wanyan said, "Do not just see that it is peaceful here. One heard that the Buddha here is very effective. When it is time to offer the incense, one must be sincere." When that young monk saw the oncoming people, he got up and greeted. Other than the house servants that were moving stuff down from the horse carriage, Ren Wanyan and the rest followed the young monk who was leading the way to the temple. As one headed into the temple, one would find that Wolong Temple was sparsely populated. Moreover, the temple was spacious, which made one feel it empty. If one were to stay during the night, there would be some who would feel afraid. After seeing the abbot directed the few people to the courtyard. Originally, the young ladies would each have their own room and they would be close to one another. But when it reached to Shen Miao's turn, a middle-aged monk beside the abbot said, "Our apologies, there are no more rooms at the south of the pavilion. If young lady do not mind, how about the north of the pavilion?" Everyone looked at her and Shen Miao smiled. "Pardon me, I minded a lot." Fifth lady, Ren Wanyu softly reprimanded, "This is a Buddhist location, it would not accommodate your waywardness. It is just somewhat strange." Shen Miao was not moved by it. The incense does not look strong, but why are the pavilions all full? That middle-aged monk also frowned, most likely because he had never seen such a young lady with such arrogant conduct who made comments on the temple without any explanation. But Shen Miao was also different for those unruly young ladies who would make a fuss, thus with that reasonable attitude, it made one unable to respond. Little Shiju does not know. Although there are not much pilgrims that offer incense, there are many monks in the temple. That old monk smiled and explained to Shen Miao. "But if I were to stay along, it would be somewhat scary." "What to do?" she asked. This, Ren Wanyan was still soothing. "Fifth lady, it is only for one night. If one is able to get over this night, Buddha will see your sincerity, and when incense is offered tomorrow, one's wishes would definitely come true." If it was in the past, when Shen Miao heard that, she would be coaxed into it. After all, she was a person who was amenable to coaxing but not coercion, not to mention that there was Fu Shuyi in her heart and would definitely wish that Buddha would grant her wish to be together with Fu Shuyi and would swallow this little loss. But now, there was some difference. Ren Wanyan was having some headaches. She did not know why, but the current Shen Miao was a difficult person to deal with. Previously, whatever she say, Shen Miao would believe it, and thus she was easily coaxed. But now, mistakes were constantly made, and if Shen Miao was not resolved earlier, one feared that it would be an existence that would make one's head ache more. "Why not like this?" Shen Miao said with all smiles. "How about Shen and me will go to the north court to stay? With someone accompanying, I would feel at ease." This, Ren Wanyan was somewhat hesitating. If she were to stay with Shen Miao, and if she was to meet with any unexpected misfortune, it would be difficult for Ren Wanyu to escape from obligations. Not waiting for her to think out of a better way, Shen Miao continued speaking. "If Shen is not willing, then it is also alright if either eldest sister or second older sister is willing to squeeze with me." Shen Yu's gaze flashed, but she did not speak. Even though Shen Qing did not know what her mother was planning, she could vaguely guess that this trip was targeted at Shen Miao. Additionally, she currently did not bother to conceal the hate she had for Shen Miao. Naturally, she coldly said, "I am used to living alone." As such, Shen Miao muttered gently. "Then I would go with fifth lady to stay at the northern pavilion." Shen Miao's words were not even finished when Ren Wanyan spoke. She was afraid that Shen Miao would change things at this time again, and thinking that even though they were to stay together, she could still stay somewhat further away so that the blame will not fall to her. Since the heavens were high and the emperor far away, Shen Qin would not be able to say anything of her at that time, as the truth was such. Shen Miao smiled faintly, then many thanks for second Shen Qin's accompaniment. Her words were polite, but Ren Wanyan could not help but frown, but she instantly put on a smiling face. "We are after all one family." After settling the living arrangement, the next thing was to tidy things up. Because Shen Qing and Shen Yu were a little tired, they did not eat the vegetarian food together and went back to their individual rooms. After reaching the northern pavilion, without waiting for Ren Wanyan to speak, Shen Miao said, "I also feel very tired and would not be taking the meal with second Shen and head directly to the room first." Ren Wanyan was surprised for a moment before smiling, "Then suit yourself. If one is tired, then rest early." Shen Miao nodded in agreement. When the young monk who led the three of them, mistress and servants, to the room, Shen Miao could not help but sigh with admiration. Indeed, in such a cold and desolate temple like Wolong Temple, there was this room that was particularly elegant. The side was lined with a small forest which made it quiet, and even though the furnishings in the room were simple, they revealed exquisiteness everywhere. When one see it, one's heart would feel happy. "The scenery here is really beautiful." Gu Yu was unexpectedly surprised. Replying to Shiju, "Only honorable guests can stay in this particular room. The residence's Fern had instructed to leave this precious room for Shiju." The young monk said as his head lowered. "Help me to thank second Shen's good intentions." Shen Miao said lightly, but her eyes were looking around. This room was located the innermost of the northern pavilion, which meant that the surroundings were inaccessible. So if one were to scream, it would be useless. It was rare to see that they even seal off any survival route. As for the exquisite layout of the room, one was afraid that it was out of the convenience of that person to use. "What is this incense?" Jing Jie picked up a few sticks of incense on the table and put it to her nose to smell. "It is similar to orchids but is more fragrant than orchids." Her eyes fell onto the orchid-designed incense burner. This incense burner is also very unique. Gu Yu saw it and also smiled. It seemed that the temple has also specifically inquired that young lady like to light incense before sleeping. Since young lady is tired at night, one will light it up before bedtime so that young lady can sleep well at night. Now, one feel that this Wolong Temple is actually not bad. Jing Jie was laughing and joking. No wonder, even though it is located deep in the forest, second Fern still arranged to come over to pray. Shen Miao's brows slightly wrinkled. She walked forward a little and took the incense in Jing Jie's hands and smelled it. After smelling it, her brows tightened. When the two girls saw it, they asked in hesitation, "Young lady, is there anything wrong with this incense?" Anything abnormal was evil. In Shen Miao's mind, after entering Wolong Temple, she had not put her heart down. The more the place was proper, the more she could see the danger in it. She had the habit of putting incense before she sleeps, as females often like delicate things, and the incense burner was lovely. Even if one were to play, a normal female would light up the incense to match the quiet and elegant environment here. But to her, it was not the case. The females who survived in the inner palace would use all kinds of means and methods to climb up, and in Shen Miao's past life where she was the mistress of the 6 palaces for so many years, naturally she had the ability to make discerning judgments. These kind of shameful things, she had seen too many of it. As for the aphrodisiac in the incense, it was a common method that the concubines would play with. If she was a normal unmarried young lady, naturally she would not have heard of such things. It is not good thing at all. Her hand loosened and those incenses fell down. Gu Yu and Jing Jie were surprised and looked at one another. After a moment Jing Jie said, then should I throw these things away? No need. Shen Miao's gaze landed on those incenses that fell. Ren Wanyan and that person had spent so much thought and effort to prepare such a good gift to her and it would be a pity if it was wasted. A sneer suddenly appeared on her lips. Keep it. There would be a time to use it. In the room that overlooked far from Shen Miao's room, Ren Wanyan sat on the couch and facing an old woman who was hunching back. It was not someone else but Gui Momo. You know of today's matter. After it is successful, naturally you will benefit from it, but if it fails, Ren Wanyan lightly coughed. I do not need to tell you what kind of ending it would be. When she spoke, there was not any of the usual amiable appearance and her eyes made one cold. Gui Momo flattered with a smile, Furin rest assured. Everything is handled by this old servant and when this old servant does things, naturally there would not be any mistakes. It is expected that tonight would go on smoothly. Ren Wanyan's expression only then eased down before she said, I naturally trust you since you are the closest person to Fifth Lady. What we do is for the Shen residents. When Fifth Lady becomes sensible in the future, she would know the pros and cons and naturally would know that you are doing it for her own good and would not treat you unfairly. Gui Momo nodded her head in agreement but her heart was filled with contempt. If Shen Miao knew of the matter in the future, it would not be strange for her to hate her to death and how would she treat her well. Thinking of what would be happening tonight, Gui Momo could not help but be somewhat frightened. She did not think that this Shen family's second Shen Furin who always had an amiable appearance would think of such a vicious and cruel method. After all, if this matter fell on any unmarried female, it would be a life of death rather than living. In the next moment, she saw Ren Wanyan giving a look at Kaiju, who was sitting beside her, and Kaiju beamed as she took a sachet out and placed it onto Gui Momo's hands. Will trouble Gui Momo to look over the matter for this time too. Gui Momo pinched it with her fingers and when she found that the weight of the sachet was not light, happiness immediately bloomed on her face. Will definitely let Furin be satisfied. After saying a few more sentences, Gui Momo got up and left. Furin really want to rest here tonight? Shang Lan asked. This is after all the same area as fifth young lady's room. It matters not. Ren Wanyan waved her hands unconcernedly. Tomorrow morning, what I say would be what it is. Cannot say precisely but when eldest Bo returns, one fear that there will not be anyone who knows of the matter. Her laughter was somewhat vicious. Eldest Bo, eldest Sao, who asked you all to block my Qing'er's road? In the Wolong temple in the mountains, it was the time in the evening when the skies were getting dark and a light drizzle fell. The rain came with a chill wind, thus Gu Yu closed the window before saying to Shen Miao, young lady must be cautious and not catch a cold. Jing Jie wrapped Shen Miao with a cloak and spoke worriedly, the mountain roads are not easy to walk. If the rain falls for the entire night, not sure if one could leave after tomorrow morning prayers. One may need to stay one more day else the road would be muddy. One more day to rest then one will rest one more day. Gu Yu smiled, the scenery of this place is very good and the environment is also quiet and secluded. It is still better than, she swallowed the rest of the words back to her stomach as she wanted to say that it was better when comparing to those snakes in the Shen residence. Shen Miao sat at the table moving the chess pieces. The current her now loves to play chess but unfortunately the few girls by her side did not know how to play, she had to play by herself. Occasionally Gu Yu and Jing Jie would feel strange when their young lady played by herself, as there would be times when she portrayed some odd expressions which would make one's heart cold. The doors were pushed open and Gui Momo came in with smiles on her face. In her hands carried some food, she smiled while saying, young lady, this is the vegetarian cuisine of the temple. Even though it is vegetarian, Wolong Temple's cuisine is rather good. This old servant specially requested for a bowl of crystal osmanthus broth. Eldest young lady and second young lady had already tried it and said that it was good. Oh, place it there, Shen Miao said plainly. It would be best that young lady eat it while it is still hot. It would not be delicious if it cools down. Gui Momo warmly brought the bowl over to hand it over to Shen Miao. Why is Momo anxious? Jing Jie took the porcelain bowl smoothly from Gui Momo and smiled. Young lady had said to place it down. Just now she felt some discomfort and would take it after a while. Gui Momo felt annoyed in her heart but when she saw Shen Miao being indifferent to Jing Jie's words, she could only clench her teeth. Previously Shen Miao would always treat Gui Momo's words as the most important and if Gui Momo had some dispute with the maids, she would definitely punish the maids first. She did not know from when onwards Jing Jie, Gu Yu and those two girls were appreciated by Shen Miao. Just as she was contemplating, she heard Shen Miao suddenly said, Momo has already accompanied me for 14 years. Gui Momo's heart jumped a beat as she looked at Shen Miao. Just at the same time, Shen Miao also looked over. A pair of clear eyes that had a childlike innocence which also put Gui Momo in a trance. Without one noticing, that baby that was crying piteously for food had become little girl and grew up to a gracefully slim young female in front of her. Gui Momo's heart sighed. In the beginning when Shen and his wife left for the battlefield, they requested her to take good care of Shen Miao and in a blink of an eye, 14 years had passed. Momo all the while is close to me. Shen Miao said softly, one remembered there was a time where I was running a fever and it was raining outside, like it is now. The physician that the residents invited did not arrive for a long time, so Momo got worried and ran out to search for one. At the end, Momo slipped and broke your head but still instead to search for another physician to come over. Gui Momo was surprised and her expressions could not help but soften down. Young lady still remember these things. Naturally one would remember. Momo has been with me for more than a decade and even father and mother would not have accompanied me more than Momo. I see Momo as a loved one. This old servant doesn't deserve the fortune of young lady. Gui Momo lamented in her heart. She did not expect that in this moment Shen Miao, who had been treated her coldly, would suddenly be so intimate. A wave of feelings rose in her heart after all one was not like this from the beginning. In the beginning Shen and his wife made her be Shen Miao's Momo. Her son had yet to take a wife and she did not have any grandchildren so she treated Shen Miao as her own granddaughter. There was also a period where she treated her with real feelings, but every man for oneself else heaven and earth would destroy one. Shen Miao was after all not her real granddaughter and if second household deliver its promise, when the matter was successful, her son's entire family would be able to reap the benefits. Money came from danger, moreover Shen Miao would not be able to bring her anything. Gui Momo's expression changed a number of times but at the end she smiled and said, young lady, the weather is cold and the night is dark, it would be good to rest after having one's meal. When it's time to rest, light the incense and have a good night's sleep then it would be good to pray for master and Furin early tomorrow morning. Many thanks for Momo's concern. Shen Miao also smiled but her smile seemed to contain some unknown things. She said, Momo withdraw first, I will have the meal myself. Gui Momo would like to stay a while more but seeing Shen Miao putting on a look of chasing her out, she could only withdraw. When she exited the room, she did not walk far and moved to the window so that she would be able to listen to the movements inside. After a moment in the room, Gu Yu's voice sounded, young lady, the dishes are getting cold. Set the table then. Afterwards there were sounds of chopsticks clinking, seemingly someone had sat down on the table to eat. Jing Jie asked, does young lady find that this osmanthus broth good? Not bad. Shen Miao voice rang out. It's to one's taste. Then do eat more, Gu Yu said with a smile. After listening for a while, Shen Miao seemed to have finished and the sounds of the cutlery being cleared sounded before Gu Yu walked out, carrying the food basket. One could only hear Jing Jie saying, young lady still want to read a while. Feeling somewhat tired, we'll read for a moment more. Go and light the incense. Shen Miao's voice was rather wan. Gui Momo straightened up her body and gave a big sigh of relief before looking back at the window again. She walked out of the courtyard and only when she exited the courtyard, she then could not help but mumble, young lady must not blame this old servant for being vicious, second Furin wants to deal with you and no one can stop it. When Gui Momo left, she did not see a male figure appearing behind her. He saw the back view of Gui Momo leaving and a somewhat furious expression appear on his face. In the room, Jing Jie looked at Shen Miao worriedly, young lady, Gu Yu had already gone out. This servant still does not understand what exactly young lady wants to do. She did not know why but Jing Jie's heart felt somewhat uneasy, as if in this deep and quiet mountain, something would happen. She asked, young lady acted the show to deceive Gui Momo just now, was it because Gui Momo is up to a scheme? And the words that Shen Miao said in an amiable manner to Gui Momo made Jing Jie nervous. She fears that Shen Miao would be like before where she would listen to Gui Momo words. Shen Miao looked at the flouncing flame of the candle wick. The small sparks that the flame formed had a crackling sound, which was a sharp contrast compared to the rhythm of the rain outside. Pretending to eat and pretending to light the incense were just temporary measures. As for the reason to say such words to Gui Momo, it was not because her heart was soft. In the road of revenge, no one could turn around. It did not mean that if there was kindness in the past, there would be a reason to why mistakes could be made in the future. The wicked were never worthy of any mercy and the winners would always speak the last words to the losers before their heads fell. She closed her eyes lightly. Young lady, what can be done now? Seeing Shen Miao not answering her, Jing Jie can only change the question. Wait. Waiting for what? The eyelashes of the young female slightly fluttered as her lips slightly hooked up. Wait for the night beneath the raven moon when it is time to kill and rob. The skies gradually darkened and in the temple, the monk hit the last bell of the day as the skies thickened. The rain fell onto the trees, emitting the fragrant soil smell. Shen Yu sat in front of the table and placed the pages down. She rubbed her eyes and it seemed that she was somewhat tired. The maids beside asked, does young lady want to rest? Shen Yu did not say anything. She opened the window and the room next door was Shen Qing's. Shen Qing's room was not far from her and at this moment was lighted up. Second young lady want to sleep together with eldest young lady? The maid hesitantly asked. No, Shen Yu turned with some disgust. Go to the courtyard door and close it. At the other end, Shen Qing was in the room fiddling with some toys and yawned lazily. She took a look outside. It is already this late. She got up. It is good to rest. When she passed the table, she suddenly saw there was a unique shaped incense burner and there were also incense nearby. Shen Qing picked it up and smelled it and felt that was a clear fragrance. She said, also light up this incense. After another short moment, the lights in the room were extinguished. Everything was attributed to the silence. As the night fell on the ancient temple in the mountain, other than the birds tweeting and the bugs sleeping, there was only the rain hitting the roof tiles and the crisp sounds of the rain dripping down from the tiles to the stone floor. In the silence at the deepest room of the north pavilion, even the candles were quietly extinguished. It seemed that there was someone's footsteps gently passing in the dark and if there was someone who did walk by, one would be able to see a purple-clad young female sitting at the table by the window. Her complexion was clear and there was no expression on her face. There existed only a pair of eyes that were so clear that the night could not cover them, as if it was a hunting animal that was in close pursuit of its oncoming prey. The tiles above their heads seemed to have some rustling sound, making Gu Yu and Jing Jie, who were standing behind Shen Miao, to raise their heads up as they nervously protected the person in front of the table. After a moment, a cat call meow was heard from the window outside. Both of them gave a sigh of relief at the same time. Not waiting for them to catch their breath, they heard a burst of rapid footsteps. Even though the sounds were light, they were exceptionally clear to the three of them who were not asleep. Afterwards the window was opened and a figure jumped in. Young lady, it is Mo Qing. That person whispered. It was then when Gu Yu and Jing Jie were finally relieved. Jing Jie lit a thin candle as she was afraid that the light could be seen from outside. Upon first glance, she was shocked as she saw that Mo Qing's was carrying someone on his back and that person was Shen Qing. At this moment Shen Qing's eyes were closed, with a look of being in a deep sleep. Jing Jie and Gu Yu were endlessly frightened but Shen Miao swept a look at Shen Qing before she lightly spoke, you did well. Mo Qing's expression was somewhat embarrassed. It was also his first time doing this kind of things and he did not know what was Shen Miao planning exactly. He guessed in his heart that it was most likely Shen Miao's tantrum as she was not satisfied with her current rooms as she used this method to change the rooms in the middle of the night. But this method was too brutal. If one was not careful and was discovered, he would be flower thief. No matter how much he explained, there was no way of clearing himself. However, it was good that Shen Qing and Shen Yu had only 2 guards outside their rooms and for a general lineage's young lady, it would be just too strange. But it was just the case and he would not be met with trouble as carrying a little young female was an easy thing to do, and before that he also followed instructions to mix Shen Qing's incense with those that could make her sleep deeply. Carry her to the bed, Shen Miao said. Mo Qing followed the instructions and after some thoughts, he pulled the quilt over to cover Shen Qing. Even at this moment, Mo Qing still did not understand what Shen Miao wanted to do. Young lady, now Gu Yu asked testily. In this room, other than Shen Miao, there was no one else that knew what she wanted to do. Mo Qing thought that Shen Miao was acting rashly and as for Jing Jie and Gu Yu, they vaguely could tell that something was wrong. The current Shen Miao would not have acted rashly just because the room was not ideal and not to mention about carrying someone over in the middle of the night. If it was just because of that small thing, it was making a mountain out of a molehill. Leave. Shen Miao eyes swept across the person on the bed. Leave. Gu Yu was surprised for a moment. Where do we go? Naturally to the room of my eldest sister. Mo Qing sighed in his heart. It was indeed a childish prank. There was some dissatisfaction in his heart about Shen Miao. He did not think that Shen Miao looked quiet and cool but had such a stubborn temper inside, to even play with her own Tangji's innocence for such a small matter. Just as he was thinking, suddenly his expression changed and he whispered, who is it? This time, Gu Yu and Jing Jie panicked. Were you been seen when you came over? Shen Miao's expression sank. If it was the people from that side, there was no logic for them to be this fast. With Ren Wanyun's comprehensive and thorough temperament, she would definitely not let that side and wait a while longer. How could it be that when Mo Qing brought the person in, someone would have found out? Could it be? Her expression changed. If there was no choice then one could only take the lowest approach. I will go out first to take a look. Mo Qing extracted the sword from his waist but when he reached the door, there was a figure flitting by the window. Because Qing Mo did not want to make such a big movement, he called out softly, who is it? And his sword pointed towards that direction. However that black-clad man only lightly avoided Mo Qing's sword. No one know what kind of skills he used. With one leg on the window eaves, he could fly in like a sparrow and swim like a fish in water. Once he entered the room, he suddenly turned around, making Mo Qing unable to respond in time. Then that person turned sideways in a flash and grabbed the sword in Mo Qing's hands easily. In the next moment, that sword was pointing above Mo Qing's neck. The sudden changes made everyone become stunned. Shen Miao was also somewhat surprised in her heart. With Mo Qing's high martial arts, he could definitely rise to the position of a commander. Initially it was because of his martial arts skills that he could protect Shen Miao for all those years in Qin country. However, he was unable to surpass this black-clad person and even lost his sword to the other in no more than 5 moves. Mo Qing also did not think that the opponent would be higher in skills than him, and even though he was ashamed, he was however more worried about Shen Miao's safety as he said, "This one has no ill feelings with this brother, why is there a need to take such violent actions?" His words were not wrong. Tonight in this temple, other than the monks, there were only the guards from Shen residence. But the guards in Shen residence did not have such a high level of skills. Mo Qing was surprised. Was there other people in this Wolong temple? The other person did not had any intention of letting go. Listening to the slightest sound, it was Shen Miao who lit a spark and set the almost extinguished candle up again. The other person did not expect that someone would suddenly light a fire and could not disguise his face fast enough, subconsciously intending to kill those who had seen it. However, when that little dim light shone, nothing could be hidden in the room. When Shen Miao's cool eyes met that handsome face, there was a trace of amazement, but later there was a frown on that face. Shen family's girl. Is it possible to let my bodyguard go? Shen Miao's voice was cooler than the autumn wind outside, thanking little Xie Marquis. The person standing opposite was not someone else but Xie Jingxing. Under the flickering light in the dark, his brows were as handsome as a painting, but they were tightly knitted and there was a chill that was very different than during the daytime, as if he was a different person. Jing Jie and Gu Yu had seen Xie Jingxing several times, so they naturally knew who this person was. With hearts full of surprise, they could not help but stand in front of Shen Miao to protect her. However, it was Mo Qing's first time seeing Xie Jingxing. He did not know what kind of person Xie Jingxing was, but from Shen Miao words, he came to know that both of them knew one another. Xie Jingxing stared at Shen Miao and after pondering for a moment, he smiled and let go of his hand. In a blink of an eye, the sword was returned to Mo Qing. He lazily retreated to the door and said, "Shen family girl, to be able to meet here, one would say that you and I are fated or destined." Xi Miao did not pay attention to him and instructed Mo Qing and the 2 maids, quickly leave. Jing Jie and Gu Yu glanced at Xie Jingxing before nodding in agreement. However, just as they were leaving, Shen Miao said to them, "You all leave first, I will follow behind." In the dark night and under the small light, one could see the small flame slightly flickering as Gu Yu panicky responded, "Young lady. Leave." Shen Miao opened her mouth. Her order was short and firm, making Gu Yu to tremble. Mo Qing shook his head and dragged one maid away by the hand and jumped out of the window and headed outside. Xie Jingxing's hands were resting at his neck as he watched her actions with interest. Shen Miao fumbled to the front of the table and before the fire extinguished, she managed to find that incense burner and lit the incense that was found on the table. After which, she then wanted to withdraw from the room. Just as she was about to do that, she saw Xie Jingxing's brows knitted and suddenly with his fingers, he extinguished the flame. In the blanket of darkness, a figure suddenly swept in front of Shen Miao and lightly grabbed her waist. Before Shen Miao could react, she fell into a gentle embrace. That person held her and rolled to the area below the bed. "You," Shen Miao was incessantly furious. With a shish, Xie Jingxing voice sounded by her ear, "There is someone coming in." Footsteps sounded in the room and Shen Miao stiffened. She had never imagined that these people's movements were actually this fast. The fortunate thing was that these new persons did not lit the lights in the room, but that was what she expected. According to that person's nature and love of stimulation, naturally lights would not be lit. Someone outside said, "Prince Lord, everything is arranged properly. You all can retreat and stand guard outside. Don't interrupt this prince's exhilaration." Another slightly hoarse voice sounded and Shen Miao's eyes slightly moved. It was indeed Prince Yu. Shen Shin. Prince Yu's voice was filled with complacency. It seemed that there was an abnormal level of excitement. This prince want to try out. What is the difference of taste between your daughter and those other women? Footsteps headed towards the front of the bed. Shen Miao's fist gradually clenched and tightened. Xie Jingxing lowered his head slightly. Due to their positions, his chin was pressed against Shen Miao's head and he could smell the young female's light hair fragrance. Even though he was unable to see Shen Miao's expression due to the darkness, from the tense posture of her body, she was not in the least indifferent as she seemed to be. There were already sounds of clothes ripping from the bed. Prince Yu's voice was ferocious and endless dirty language flowed out. Shen Qing seemed to have restored some of her sanity and started to show some resistance. But the sound was soft and it did not sound like resisting but as if it was welcoming. The air was filled with a taste that made one's heartbeat increase. As the smell gradually spread, together with some orchid fragrance, it was sucked into one's abdomen. Shen Miao also gradually felt that something was not right. Her heart jeered a beat. Now she had to suffer from the aphrodisiac incense that she lit before she wanted to leave. She had never encountered such a situation before and could not help but lash out on the uninvited Xie Jingxing. If it was not because of Xie Jingxing's sudden appearance, most likely she would have long left by now and she would not have fallen into feeling such embarrassment. Thinking about this, she glared ferociously at the culprit. Unfortunately, there was no light and no one could see anything. Shen Miao hesitated a little, as she was afraid that any big action would startle the people on the bed. She could only cover her mouth and nose with Xie Jingxing's clothes. She remembered that the fragrance was not a good thing and reminded herself not to smell it so much, so then she thought of using Xie Jingxing's clothes to cover her nose and mouth but had forgotten that Xie Jingxing was a male. When Xie Jingxing realized that there was a problem with the incense, he had already breathed in too much and unfortunately there was also a little girl in his embrace. The current Shen Miao was still wet behind the ears and even though she had a flat body, she had the flesh and fragrance of a beauty. His body tensed up and in this critical juncture, Shen Miao shuffled closer to his body and half of her head was buried into his arms. Xie Jingxing took a deep breath. Since birth, this was actually the first time that he was in such a difficult situation. Looking at the top of his head, that big bed was squeaking and shaking non-stop and the females and males' voices were intertwined, making anyone else blush. That sound of activity would make one suspect if this bed would be able to stand the action or collapse directly. After clenching their teeth and hearing for almost half a shichen, the movements on the bed got gradually smaller and halfway there was a rest. Shen Miao's body was just too stiff but just at this moment, she felt Xie Jingxing holding her and rolled out before taking the advantage of the open window and flew out. It was dark and there was no light and she did not know how he could see that clearly, but fortunately Prince Yu was not disturbed. Not far away, they saw the anxious faces of the 3 of them. Upon seeing them coming out, Jing Jie almost jumped up in excitement but was afraid that the sound could be heard outside. She softly said, "Young lady, this servant was worried sick. Just now someone went in, would it be found out?" Her words ended abruptly because it was only at this moment that she clearly saw Shen Miao's posture. Shen Miao was still being carried by Xie Jingxing, his body was well built and was able to carry her effortlessly. Jing Jie angrily said, "Quickly put down my young lady." Xie Jingxing raised his brows and let go of his hands. With a "pa" sound, Shen Miao fell directly onto the ground. Gu Yu was enraged and indignant as she did not expect Xie Jinxing would be let go in such a rude way. She quickly supported Shen Miao in anguish and comforted, "Is young lady all right?" Mo Qing stared at Xie Jinxing as his heart was filled with surprise and suspicions. This seemingly noble young master's martial arts skills were superb and he himself was actually powerless against him. To possess such level of skills would make him raise his eyebrows, but to appear here in the middle of the night was indeed suspicious. Just now when he brought Gu Yu and Jing Jie out, they saw people going into Shen Miao's room and behind them there was a group of highly skilled guards. If he did not hide quickly, then there would have been trouble. Mo Qing could not help but look at Shen Miao. Could it be that Shen Miao had long known that there would be such a group of people coming tonight? Then what was the reason for bringing Shen Qing over? Shen Miao stood up and patted the dust on her body before looking calmly at Xie Jinxing. The deeper the night the more exposure there would be. Will not disturb little Marquis from working. We will leave first. Her attitude was very alienating. At this moment the heavens did not stop the drizzle and the fine silk-like rain landed on her, making her clothes wet. Just with that little light from the lantern outside, Xie Jinxing's eyes swept across her face and suddenly smiled as if he was watching a good show. To leave here, one would need to go through the outer courtyard which had a number of guards defending it. If you want to head to death, this Marquis would not stop anyone from heading to their death. So please. His words were said annoyingly and there was a stubborn smile on his face. Shen Miao looked at Mo Qing. Mo Qing shook his head and said ashamedly, "This subordinate do not have any confidence alone." Although Prince Yu was incompetent, his subordinates were not vegetarians. Little Marquis seemed to know what to do. She said after a moment of silence. Xie Jinxing's lips hooked up to a smile as he got up to leave and did not pay attention to the intention of this group of people. "Can you lend a helping hand?" she asked. Xie Jinxing turned back and after some pondering, he nodded his head. "It is not that it cannot be done but. If you beg me, I will then bring you all out." Gu Yu's and Jing Jie's face changed. This Xie Jinxing's character was stubborn and obstreperous and his tone was so frivolous but facing his handsome face, any other female would have blushed. If it were not for the close relationship between mistress and servants, one was afraid that Jing Jie and Gu Yu would not be angry at all today. Mo Qing frowned. Shen Miao was Shen Shen's daughter and it would be assumed that on normal days she would be spoiled and pampered and by looks, she was also one that had a stubborn temperament. For Xie Jinxing to be this provocative, one was afraid that Shen Miao would be extremely indignant. Contrary to Mo Qing's expectations, after Shen Miao heard it, she quickly actually said, "All right, I beg of you, bring us out." Her words were said too quickly that Xie Jinxing could not help but choke a bit. He carefully examined the young female in front. Even though she was asking for help, her eyes were very calm, her posture was unruffled and there was no trace of being lower than the other. That kind of feeling was very subtle, as if she was not seeking help from others but a far superior person ordering around. Not waiting for Xie Jinxing to speak, Shen Miao immediately said, "Little Marquis want to go back on one's word. You truly have a villainous heart." Xie Jinxing smiled and said to his back, "Come out." In only the blink of an eye, a crowd of black-clad people came out from the surroundings. Roughly counting, there was actually around over 10 people, which was comparable to the amount of people that Prince Yu brought along. Jing Jie and Gu Yu jumped in shock and Mo Qing was also surprised. His martial arts were not weak but he did not know that there were so many people hiding here and the other skills were all higher than him. Moreover this young fellow who was able to gather and move so many high-level players, it really made others to doubt his identity. Xie Jinxing said, "Actions must be carried out cleanly. Do not beat the grass and scare the snake." The black-clad people lowered their heads and agreed before disappearing in the blink of an eye to the darkness of the night. Their actions were surprisingly consistent and it was difficult to have such traits in the guards that were kept in Ming Qi's families. Shen Miao was thinking deeply when she heard Xie Jinxing speaking. Some time would be required so we should head the other way. He turned and walked towards the opposite direction. From his actions, one could tell that he was very familiar with the layout of this temple. "Follow him," Shen Miao said. One did not know how did Xie Jinxing's subordinate arranged it but in the entire way they did not encounter anyone at all. Even upon reaching Shen Qing's and Shen Yu's southern pavilion, there was not a single guard in sight. After safely reaching there, Shen Miao said to Mo Qing, "You can return." The guards had an area where all of them stayed and Mo Qing sneaked out of it tonight. If one discovered it, there would be changes. Gu Yu and Jing Jie accompanied Shen Miao into the room but Xie Jinxing did not leave. Jing Zhen stepped up and blocked Xie Jinxing's steps from entering the room before glaring at him vigilantly. "Gentlemen, do stay back." Xie Jinxing really stayed back and smiled as he looked at Shen Miao's back. "Shen Miao, you even save explaining even after wasting this Marquis entire night." Shen Miao's steps paused as her heart slightly sighed. Xie Jinxing this person seemed to have been born with a clever and exquisite heart and his sharp ears and keen eyes made one jealous as he could see many things clearly with one look. She was also too lazy to hide it from him. She glanced at Jing Jie and Gu Yu. "Both of you go to the outer chambers to sleep first. Little Marquis follow me in." "Young lady," Gu Yu was somewhat panicking. "This is not appropriate. It would be a shock to the world if it was spread out that one spent the night with a strange man in a room. If anyone were to catch it, Shen Miao would truly be finished." The small matter with Fu Shuyi can be said as a young female's spring dream since nothing actually happened but this matter would impact on one's reputation and even if one jumped into the Yellow River, one would never be able to wash oneself clean. Since no one knows what is wrong, Shen Miao did not intend to listen to the two maids and looked at Xie Jinxing. "Come in." Xie Jinxing shrugged his shoulders and followed Shen Miao into the inner chambers. After seeing the unsettledness in both maids' eyes, Shen Miao calmly closed the door. After lighting the lamp and closing the windows, the entire room was isolated from the rhythm of the rain outside and Shen Miao sat down at the table. Xie Jinxing stood against the wall and asked with interest as he watched her pouring tea, "Why are you not afraid of me?" "Why should I be afraid of you?" Shen Miao asked in reply. "An unmarried lady and a strange male in a room at the same time. You are not afraid that I would do anything to you." His smile became vile but his looks got outrageously more handsome under the light. "Just now, I have already listened to the affairs of the bed chambers of others with you and to be now afraid, do not little Marquis find that it is too late already?" Shen Miao plainly said. Xie Jinxing was surprised for a moment and an incredulous look appeared on his face. In all these years, he had experienced a number of things and he has knowledge of things that others at his age would not even know of. At least in Ding Capital and even in Mingqi, he was considered to be broadly knowledgeable. But this was the first time, and a female moreover, to bring out the words affairs of the bed chambers without having their face changing colors. Just now in the dark he was unable to see Shen Miao's expression but now that he could think about it, after leaving there, Shen Miao's voice was calm and her attitude was unhurried, as if the person who was with him listening to the affairs of the bed chambers was someone else. He almost started to doubt if this girl was a monster. "Are you a woman or not?" Xie Jinxing said as he folded his arms. A normal female would be shy and embarrassed and would not mention the matter at all but she did not react then and afterwards to even bring it up without knowing any shame. Even if she was the daughter of the formidable general, this was just too unusual. Shen Miao did not speak. Xie Jinxing nodded his head, almost forgot that you are naturally not a woman. You are just a little girl. Even though Shen Miao's conduct was mature but with her looks, she could act artfully to get what she wanted. Especially her fair egg-shaped face with the baby fats that had yet to fade. When she did not speak, she looked younger than her age. Xie Jingxing said in his heart, probably she was too young and did not know the situation of the affairs of the bedchambers, that is why she had a calm attitude. The more he thought the more he felt that this was the reason. Xie Jingxing walked over and looked condescending at Shen Miao. Just now I did not hold you accountable for that aphrodisiac incense that almost tripped me. He held Shen Miao face tightly and pinched twice. What do you say to that? Shen Miao blanked out for a moment as she did not expect that Xie Jingxing would suddenly do that, and the other person seemed to feel that it was rather fun doing this and pinched another 2 times, but it was not done lightly but forcefully without caring that she was the fairer gender. As if she was really a little girl that was ignorant of the worldly affairs. Impudent, she subconsciously scolded softly. When the words were out, both of them froze. In the lamp's light, the youth's handsome face stiffened and the pair of sharp dark eyes instantly had a complex look. He retracted his hand and chuckled lightly. This is the first time that someone said impudent to me. Shen Miao was somewhat angry at herself for that momentary gaffe. Xie Jingxing, this person would always do things outside of expectations, and just now in her urgency she brought out the attitude that she had as the Empress of the Inner Palace. This person was extremely smart and it would not be good to be discovered. But she did not know what to say, so she could only stay silent. Xie Jingxing broke the silence and sat down on the chair facing Shen Miao before pouring a cup of tea for himself. Suddenly he thought of something and took out something from his chest that was wrapped in paper, and it was some intricately designed pastry. It looked much more beautiful than the Guangfu snacks in the capital. Xie Jingxing ate the pastries and drank the tea in big mouthfuls as he spoke, came out in such a hurry that dinner was not taken. This tea is really difficult to drink. Just as if he was like a picky noble youth. Xie Marquis is here to drink tea and eat snacks. Shen Miao looked at him. Naturally not. Xie Jingxing suddenly smiled and picked up a snack to place it in Shen Miao's mouth. His actions were too fast, and before Shen Miao could react, her mouth already tasted the sweetness. Xie Jingxing rested his chin in his hands and looked at her. Even though he had a leisurely attitude, but his words were very sharp. Now answer my question since you have eaten my stuff. The light fragrance of the pastry spread out in her mouth, and there was a touch of sweet and fruity flavor that left an aftertaste on one's lips and mouth. Even Shen Miao, who do not like to eat sweet stuff, could not help but felt that it was delicious. What is the relationship between Prince Yu and you? Shen Miao looked at him. You might as well ask me why did I do this tonight. I would wash one's ears and listen with great respect if you are willing to say. Insult a person and one will humiliate back. A tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. Xie Jingxing's eyes changed a few times before his lips smiled and he spoke in an inexplicable manner. You are indeed ruthless to pile your older sister with Prince Yu, that old dog. To call Prince Yu as an old dog was only something Xie Jingxing, that lawless person, would dare to say. When they sent me out, they have never thought that I was the younger sister. Shen Miao opposed with equal harshness. Her words were cold and did not conceal the disgust and disdain she had for those people. In the light, she had an indifferent expression, but her pair of eyes seemed to have a fire burning in them. Really a girl without knowledge of the complexity of things. Xie Jingxing lazily stretched. Prince Yu will not let you off after the matter. And that depends if he has the ability to do so. Shen Miao remained unswayed. To tell me so much, Xie Jingxing wondered, and suddenly he leaned forward so much that he almost reached Shen Miao's nose. Shen Miao could not help but be slightly surprised at the closeness. However, as she did not want to be suppressed by that imposing manner, she did not move and just sat tight. The youth with such a handsome face had an evil smile on his face, but his voice deliberately sounded frivolous as he whispered to her ears, not afraid of me telling others. Little Marquis can do whatever one loves to do. Anyways, I am also very curious what kind of actions will the residents of the Marquis of Linen take with regards to the eldest son coming to Wolong Temple to relieve boredom in the middle of the night. Xie Jingxing appeared tonight at this moment was by no means accidental. Moreover, he brought a group of black-clad people with extraordinary skills which made his identity more shocking. In this world, there were no such things as coincidences, and Xie Jingxing did not come here to see her, thus most likely he was coming out with some plans when they met. The youth's eyes were very pretty. They were a pair of beautiful peach-colored eyes. When smiling, they would attract one's minds, but when they looked down, a dangerous cold light exuded from them. For a moment, even Shen Miao was suppressed by that imposing manner. It is not that she had never seen those kind of coercive people. Qin country's imperial family, Ming Qi's imperial family, and even those arrogant Shang knew. But in front of this person, it seemed to be more dangerous. Your guts are not small. He smiled lightly. Likewise. Xie Jingxing stood up and swept his eyes at her before saying lightly, the matter with that old dog, this Marquis have no interest at all. If you dare to reveal any bit of tonight's matter, Shen family's girl, murdering to silence someone is not a matter to be taken lightly. The words just landed as he opened the window to jump out and disappeared into the blanket of rain in the dark night. The fine drizzle floated in following the opening of the windows and landed on Shen Miao's cheeks. The coldness climbed up her cheeks and the wind blew onto her face, making her mind much sober as Shen Miao gave a sigh of relief. Dealing with Xie Jingxing was as if one walked on a rope. To be unfathomable at such a young age that every sentence seemed unintentional but was used to test at every turn. This kind of dangerous feeling made her uneasy. Even though she had never treated the residents of the Marquis of Linen as an enemy of the Shen family, the relationship between the two residences was clear, and Xie Jingxing naturally would not cause an obstruction. The encounter tonight was most likely because Xie Jingxing was here to do something. As compared to the frivolous joking little Xie Marquis, he was very much different. The him under the raining night was as if he was a different person. At first he only knew that Xie Jingxing had some skills, but now upon consideration, the secret within the residence of the Marquis of Linen was not that simple. Her eyes landed on the table at the snacks that Xie Jingxing did not finish. If not for these, everything was as traceless as a dream. But now was not a time to think about such stuff. To her, Xie Jingxing was not very important. Tomorrow, everything had to be dealt with tomorrow. At the back of the mountain, the rain had covered the entire mountain.